Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. I don't know if I have it in me physically to deal with yet another coaching change. 48 hours ago, we learned Mike Vrabel has been let go of the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and we have not reached the end of that. I guarantee you that. We heard from Michael Lombardi in the GM Shuffle podcast some of what he has been hearing about what went on behind the scenes, and of course the wonderful piece that Joe Rex wrote and Diana Rossini collaborated on, maybe provided a little bit more insight of what went on behind the scenes, the Vrabel perspective of things, the Amy Adams Strunk perspective of things, when did the relationship start to go south, really what were some of the motivating factors behind moving on from Mike Vrabel. We will get into that. But yesterday, the college football world, the football world as a whole, was kind of taken by storm with the news that Nick Saban has announced his retirement. And early this morning, the news came out that the New England Patriots are parting ways with Bill Belichick. Now, Bill Belichick has a press conference now. Robert Kraft will be speaking as well. There are obvious ties between Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, so we'll be keeping an eye and an ear on that press conference. If there's anything that comes out relating to Mike Vrabel that would be relevant to you, we will bring that to you as soon as possible. Willy's in a suit today. Bill Belichick's in a suit today. Everybody's got their Thursday best on. Willy, D-Mase, how we doing?
Feeling good. Didn't wear the hoodie to the press
No,
conference.
I didn't even know he owned a tie, really. I thought I knew he probably owned a sport coat because everybody should have every grown man, if you can, should have a sport coat.
Sport coat with sleeves, though?
Yeah, sport coat with sleeves and a tie. Man, you could tell he's not comfortable wearing a suit and tie. You could tell how the tie is kind of crooked and his shirt is kind of crooked a little bit. He's like, man, get me out of this thing as quickly as possible. But the end of an era, not just in the NFL, but also in the college football world with Nick Saban choosing to retire. It's ironic that one gets fired and the other retires. Now, will Bill Belichick coach again? We don't know. We assume that he will. But I don't think it's hard pressed to believe that we will ever see a run like the one that the New England Patriots had throughout that tenure, his 24 years there. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but it's going to be a very long time, because people get impatient, fan bases get impatient, and if you don't win right away, then they want turnover very quickly, and, that's just the way of the world now. But New England stayed patient with him. He hit lightning in the bottle with Tom Brady, and off you go. And then on the other side, Nick Saban chooses to retire. I think, if you wanted to be real with yourself, you probably saw this coming. The minute he started doing things outside of Alabama, meaning outside of the football confines of Alabama, you knew it was when he got on the McAfee show and all this other stuff.
When he started smiling.
Yeah, he's always inside. He's been a guy that you see his personality. But on the outside, people think he's rugged and rigid and all this other stuff. But the minute he started going outside the confines of the Alabama world and started ingratiating himself with the country, and showing his personality, I think that's when you knew it might be coming to an end. And I think he enjoyed that. I really do believe he enjoyed that. And maybe he will segue into, doing that. But one thing I caution people, he's not a caricature. He's not going to be this guy that Corso was on. Corso's been on what is it, Game Day?
Game Day.
And people say, well, he may, replace Corso. Yeah, but not in that same fashion, because he's not that type of. You're not gonna make. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna use him as a joke or fun. And Corso did a wonderful job. And I know toward the latter end of his career, even now, he's become more of that, one segment guy. But before that, he was intricate in what they were doing on Game Day. But Saban, he may segue into that and may love it. It just seemed like he had fun. He enjoyed being on a Pat McAfee show. He was allowed to allow his personality to sort of come out, and he got comfortable with it, I believe. And that may have been, along with the NIL and all this other stuff, that may have been a thing for him, maybe I need to segue out of this, and this is the right time. So, kudos to him, and he's been a tremendous coach. I had a pleasure of being coached by him for 2 years at Michigan State. So his greatness will forever, be there in college football lore and history.
I just think about the era. Think about just maybe this century, basically, is what it covers. Nick Saban just starting to get established, as a first-rate coach and then growing from there. But if you look at the last 25 years, those two are the measuring stick of greatness, right, in college and pro football. It's really not even debatable. It's like they're so far ahead of the field that it's not even close. That's what I think historically, when we look back in another 25 years, another 50 years, I still think it's going to be tough to top what those two guys did in this period of time that we're talking about. And my first thought, this is my question to you, D-Mase, because you know him better than most people around here. Do you think he looked around and said, the world's changing here? This is not a bad time to get off the ride. He's had a year or two of this NIL madness, the transfer portal madness. You put the two of them together, and it's double madness. Like it's like maybe more than double. You put them together, it's like more than the sum of the two parts. And you look at where it's going. You got all this geographic nonsense of college football now. Where's it going to be in the next 10 years? It's going to be a different game. Do you think this is maybe a time where you just said, you know what? It's time to get off the ride. I don't want to deal with this stuff.
I think he was good with the transfer portal. I think he was that you got to give kids opportunities if they're not playing at your school, if they're not happy. Okay, if you want to go somewhere else, you're able to do that. The transfer portal was always there. It was just a little bit more difficult to transfer to different schools. You had to sit out a whole year and all this other stuff. So it was still there, but it was a little bit difficult. But then once they sort of moved those guardrails where guys and girls could transfer, I don't think he was so much bent out of shape about that because it's just the way it is. I think it became the NIL stuff. How do you coach a guy that's 17 years old and he's making 7 figures? How do you coach that guy?
Or if he's not making 7 figures, he's thinking around going, I may not be playing here, but somebody else is going to give me 7 figures.
Yeah, but how do you coach that guy if
how do you
you want 7 figures or you making somebody giving you 7 figures to come to my team? How do you coach that guy? There has to be a method to coaching those guys. And it's not just one. Those guys are coming more frequently now where they're getting these, lucrative deals in college. And that's great. But I think his thing was there's no guardrails. There's no guardrails. It's just the wild, wild west. I'm not going to continue to go down that path because it doesn't seem like college football is going to straighten this thing out. It's going to get worse and worse. And if that's the case, I might as well either retire or go to the pros. Well, the pros, at least they respect me, I respect them, and there's a different dynamic between the head coach and a pro athlete. When you got a college coach and these athletes and they're getting paid 6 and 7 figures, how do you coach that?
I think it's something that a lot of coaches are probably wrestling with, but there are probably a lot of coaches that aren't at the stage
exactly
that Nick Saban is in.
And they
at
can't
72,
walk away.
Where he would say, I can walk away if I want. Who knows? Does he want to coach somewhere else? Probably not in college. Does he want to take one more crack at the pros? I don't know. Pete Carroll just got fired at 72. He's the oldest one. But I don't think that the way the formula works right now matches up with his principles.
He's an old school coach.
He's an old school coach that has done a great job evolving and adapting with the times, and he can still win. But I just don't think he's buying in to the direction it's going, and I don't blame him. I think there's a ton of coaches that are sitting there going, I got to adapt to this world. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want. I'll give you an example from my era. My college coach, Eddie Fogler, 2-time coach of the year nationally, once at Vanderbilt, once at South Carolina. But the shoe company thing, the AAU, it was changing the formula of how you go about recruiting. And I don't want to speak for him, but he definitely didn't like that part of it nearly like he did when he was coming up as an assistant coach for Dean Smith at North Carolina, where there was still always games being played, right? There's always been that kind of game. But there was still family that was making the decision. The kid was making the decision, surrounded by his high school coach and his family. It was evolving away from that. It was, what shoe company does your team wear? What AAU team does the guy play for? All of these games that have only evolved, and now it's just complete chaos with college basketball's maybe being even worsely affected than college football. So it's changed, and I don't blame some coaches. Jay Wright's another one that I think sat there at Villanova and said, you know what, I love the formula that I've had here, but it's going to be hard to keep replicating this the way the game is going, so I'm getting off the ride.
And I think it's also important to remember, and D-Mase, of course, you know Nick Saban better than any of us. Nick Saban's been a head coach in college football for nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
He's 72 years old. What more can he accomplish? His legacy is set in stone. And even though he's stepping away from college football, his legacy still exists. You look at across college football, some of the best coaches in the sport are from the Nick Saban coaching tree. So now he's afforded the opportunity to be able to enjoy time with his family, maybe something that he hasn't been able to do in the past. But just the news of Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, whenever we talk about winning championships, there are two people that come to mind that make that look easy. Winning championships is the hardest thing to do in sports. Bill Belichick and Nick Saban made winning championships look easy. They set the standard, whether it was in the NFL with the New England Patriots, whether it's in college football with Nick Saban. Every single coach that goes throughout those ranks will forever be compared to those two of what they could do. This is a good coach. He won a Super Bowl, but Bill won more. As a good coach, won a few national championships. Nick Saban won 7. So it is a very wild and surreal feeling that the entirety of my lifetime, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban nearly have been coaching. I don't know a football world without those two. So it is seismic shifts, and I think that the NFL and college football both will now be living in this era of this time that's marked as ANS or ABB after Nick Saban, after Bill Belichick, because those two really were bigger than the sport, that they felt so immortal, that they felt, so synonymous with the game of football, more synonymous with the game of football than any other person is in their profession, it seems, with Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. So, and of course, Pete Carroll. Yeah. I don't want the news of Pete Carroll being let go in Seattle to be overshadowed by those two. Pete Carroll was able to do something that Nick Saban wasn't able to do. It's not easy to have success at both levels. That Pete Carroll won a national championship at USC, went to the NFL, and won a Super Bowl.
Should have won two. We've seen a lot of coaches, try and fail at one level or another. He was able to do something that's really difficult. So those three leaving the game of football, it's a new era, and it's wild, and it is surreal to see.
Well, Bill ain't gone yet.
Bill is, we don't know if
and I
he's
wonder
gonna
what
be
Pete
done.
Carroll wants to do.
And that's a fair point. Nick Saban is retiring. Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick have not. I don't know if Pete wants to coach.
Yeah.
Bill, I think, probably will coach moving forward. But Diana Orsini was on with Robbie and Rexford yesterday. She didn't mention any program by name or franchise by name, of course. But she said there were some franchises across the NFL that weren't sold on moving on from their coach. But when they heard the news that Mike Vrabel was let go in Tennessee, maybe they fast forwarded their processes a little bit. We're not going to know. They're not going to tell us. No. I do wonder if New England is one of those franchises that maybe decided, hey, it's time to let go of Bill because Mike's on the market.
I would say that the writing was on the wall mid-season from Bill Belichick. So I don't know. I've always thought that going way, way back. Now, what's interesting to me is have there been a couple right at the end of the season that fall into the category that Diana is talking about? That, well, we could throw our hat into the ring for Mike Vrabel if that's what you're looking for. Mike Vrabel is going to be a hot free agent. I don't think there's any way around that, and I think Amy Adams knew it when she felt the need to say, yeah, we did consider trading him, but it was too complicated. I think she's acknowledging that he's an asset and it's going to be easy for him to get another opportunity. That's not why. Ultimately, she had to be able to live with that if that's part of her decision. Good coaches do get fired.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It's what do they do at their next stop. Now, wherever Mike goes, and he may have success, he may not. But you just caution Titans fans. Look at your team. Concentrate on your team. Don't, because we did that with A.J. Brown. Every time A.J. Brown had a good game, it was like, oh, look at what we could have had. Look at that. No, concentrate on your team. He's doing what he's doing over in Philly. We knew that A.J. was a hell of an athlete, a hell of a player, a hell of a person, but it just didn't work out here for whatever reason. And it's going to be the same way with Mike. He may go somewhere else, and he may start off like he did here, getting the team to a playoffs, or he may have to go through the struggles of every first-year coach sometimes, trying to rebuild a roster. But what they do have in New England, whoever chooses to go there, whether it's Mike or anyone there, they have a defense. Now they just have to build on their offense. Is he capable of wherever he goes? Because it seemed like he wanted a little bit more power here. And Miss Amy was like, nah, I'm not going to give that to you. Y'all need to work together. I'm not going to give you more power than say, the GM. Y'all work together and build this team. And it just seems like he wanted a little, based upon what we've read, based upon the reports that have come out, even the reports of yesterday. And maybe he took advantage of that. People don't realize that. Maybe he took advantage of her knowing that she wanted him. Like, that's my guy. And sometimes you can take advantage of that. Like, I can do whatever I want because I know that person wants me. The head person wants me, so I can walk around here, say what I want to say, do what I want to do, go where I want to go, New England, and say what I want to say in New England because she wants me, and she's the owner. You can't take advantage of that. And it seems maybe, just maybe, he took advantage of it, and she didn't like it.
Do you think he ends up in New England? I mean, the path is clear now. I mean, all these rumblings that we're hearing, hey, he'd be the home run hire. Hey, that's a guy they really...
Wouldn't it be funny if he doesn't get the job?
And is that really what he wants?
Yeah.
Is that a best?
Do you want to follow the guy?
For him?
Do you want to follow the guy?
Do you want to follow the guy and knowing that they've got a lot to fix? I think. I mean, I don't look at their roster and say they're a player or two away. And there's always the quarterback roulette. You got to find the guy. It's pretty clear that Mac Jones isn't the guy.
And it's
at this
tough.
point.
And we were talking about guys. It's tough to be the guy that comes after the guy.
Yeah.
And
right. Yeah.
Mike Vrabel will be the guy that comes after the guy.
And he
Bill
knows that.
Belichick. And it takes a confident son of a gun, borderline arrogant, to follow the guy. I think that might fit.
Yeah.
If we want to put our tinfoil hats on, Nick, our producer Nick Frazier, had a little bit of Instagram breaking news.
Yeah, you could call it breaking news.
I use the term breaking news very, very,
Caroline,
very
I'm
lightly.
Sorry. Jenny Vrabel, Mike's
yes.
wife, I think she changed her profile picture to Mike Vrabel in his New England Patriots jacket, red coat. Yeah. So read that for what you want.
What you will.
Oh, everybody about to start going crazy now.
But I will say,
It's like Ryan Tannehill on the
I
boat.
wouldn't say it's breaking news. It's slight news. Or would you call it breaking news?
We're going to call it breaking
breaking
news.
Okay.
We're going to do like CNN. Anything that comes across is breaking news, even though it's not.
This Justin from Instagram. It does feel like the most obvious fit, doesn't it? That we've heard so many reports, whether it's been Volan in the Boston Globe saying that Robert Kraft's home run hire would be Mike Vrabel, the Greg Bedard report of how much they wanted Mike Vrabel. Now, I know Gerard Mayo it kind of feels like he's the one that's been groomed and shaped to take over the New England job, but how much of that changes when Mike Vrabel is available? How much does Mike Vrabel want to go back to New England? The expectations are incredibly high in New England, and you're not working with a whole lot in New England. You don't have a quarterback. You don't have players around the quarterback, nor defensively do you really have any sort of juggernauts or difference makers. But it's New England. It's where Mike Vrabel was. And if there is... I've talked about this with the Alabama job. There's not a perfect fit out there. There's not. There frankly is not a perfect fit. When you follow Bill Belichick, I think Mike Vrabel feels like as perfect of a fit as any of them. That he knows the culture in New England. He is beloved in New England. That kind of feels like step one whenever you're a coach is win over the fan base. Well, Mike Vrabel's already done that. He's won Super Bowls in New England. So I do feel like it feels pretty much as good as done, just based off of my feeling and my opinion and everything that we've heard coming out that's led up to this. I have been asked very interesting questions, though. Mike Vrabel to Alabama.
No.
If
no
he wants
way,
control,
no,
you would get no more
way.
control than you
He's
would
not-
in a college coaching job.
I heard him pretty adamantly scorn at the football world of college.
Yeah,
like
he's
on
not- he's
that
not.
long, which I felt like was pretty unfiltered, open discussion with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. When they threw the Ohio State thing up there, almost jokingly, he was like, "I am not getting into that."
That's
world."
a different world.
Yeah,
That is a
especially
totally
what we
different
just
world.
talked about with Saban. I mean,
Exactly.
you got to play games.
You gotta play
that
the
go
game.
way
Yes.
beyond coaching your team.
Yeah.
And he does. Maybe he
I don't
doesn't
think
want
he
to
wants
do it.
any part of
Yeah.
that. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's wired that way, just like Saban's not.
No.
And I think there are a lot of coaches that if you can help it, you don't want to get into that part of the game. It's not what
No,
you sign
that's-
up
You'd
for.
be signing up for a lot more work in
Yeah.
college than you are in the NFL.
And some people, you have to be. It has to be in you to survive the college world, because I'm sure coaching college is much different than coaching in the pros. There are a lot more things you got to walk. You ain't got to walk into nobody's living rooms in the pros. You don't. They come to you. You know, whether it's free agents or not. You take them out to dinner. You wine and dine them. You take them to the facility. You set them down in the office. That's about it.
I'm not stroking the egos
Yeah.
of 16
But in college, you got to go to their families, their mamas, the daddies sitting in the front room talking to you, maybe the brothers and the sisters and the uncles, everybody. Then you got to go to high school. Then you got to come back. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that you have. Then you got to make sure you have a blank check sitting in your pocket.
You got to have a salary cap person.
Exactly.
And you're supposed to not really be working directly with it. That's the dumb thing about it.
So it's
like,
just so
it's
much.
the collective. It's not us making decisions.
Yeah. All right. Sure.
But either way, it's a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
a financial.
I can't see Vrabel doing
I
that.
mean, hours and hours of planning out. Okay, what's this guy getting? You get a 100-man roster, 100 people.
And it's hard. It's going to be hard. I think it would be harder winning at Alabama than it would be in New England. I just think it would be because of all of the things that are going on with the transfer portal, NIL, all this other stuff.
You heard it here first. The SEC is harder than the NFL.
Yeah, it's
I'm
whoever
kidding. I'm
comes
kidding.
after Nick Saban, boy, oh boy, you better have things set in line,
Yeah.
like set in place, because people are going to expect championships the first year. That's what, and why would you expect them to think any less? We've won championships, or we've been in the positions to win championships for 17 years. Well, at least 15 years out of the 17.
The expectations aren't
Exactly.
going anywhere. No, the
So if you
expectation
coming
is
in
still
as a new
national
coach,
championship.
we want you to win a championship. If not this year, damn sure next year.
Yeah, the expectations aren't going anywhere at Alabama. It's absolutely a difficult undertaking. All right, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So, of course, the news of the week, Mike Vrabel has been fired with the Tennessee Titans. But since then, we've heard from Rand Carthon in his press conference. Amy Adams-Strunk sat down with Mike Keith. I didn't feel like I got a lot of clarity about what really went wrong behind the scenes. How did we get to this point? In November, Diana Rossini was reporting that Titans higher-ups thought that they had the right person in place for future success. A month and a half later, he's fired? How did we get there? We could have gotten a little bit of clarity, and we'll break all of that down coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Oh my goodness, people. I thought today was Wednesday. I had to ask the band, like, is today Wednesday or Thursday? They was like, it's Thursday, Derek. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm glad I didn't say happy Wednesday, people. No. But happy Thursday, everyone. And I know you will be getting ready to make your bets here this weekend with the NFL playoffs starting this Saturday. So if you're going to make your bets, I know you're going to do them with our partners in sports. So I'm excited to tell you about their new introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee, the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up with the Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000 plus. Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up, people. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sport book, and I mean no other sports book, will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting on, bettors? Come on, get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Do it before this weekend starts, okay? Zen Sports, betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Who are you going to get to do what Vrabel does? And to me, that's if you're Rand Carthon and you really understand your job, you can't. So don't tell me everything was perfect. Don't tell me there was harmony, because there couldn't have been.
All right, that was Michael Lombardi on the GM Shuffle podcast. That's kind of what I thought. You know, when Rand Carthon said in his press conference, every decision we made was unanimous. That's not possible. That is not possible. Not every decision you can make was totally unanimous. But we have gotten some clarity, perhaps, on what we haven't seen, what went on behind the scenes. How did we go from around Thanksgiving, Diana Rossini reporting that a Titans higher-up felt confident in Mike Vrabel moving forward, and then a month and a half, he's fired? What happened there? But that was Michael Lombardi on the GM Shuffle podcast. And Willy and D-Mase, this was something that you both brought to my attention of, look, some interesting insight here. So just kind of some of your takeaways before we play a few clips from Michael Lombardi.
I just think, and we said this when this story came out about them being happy with Vrabel. Yeah, they're happy now, but things can change as the season goes. Yeah, I like this particular thing now, but maybe 2 months from now I don't like it, and maybe I want to change and do something different, or have something different. And you can do that. That's your right as an owner. You can do that. One, I thought Lombardi just so pro Vrabel. It was nauseating. And I told y'all, it was just hard to listen to, because it was like y'all didn't even try to give the alternative to what was going on. It was just y'all were Vrabel. Oh, I'm gonna give you some more Vrabel. And it was, you weren't looking at. I don't think they were looking at the big picture. So in regards to that, and they made some key points. I get it, but it was like as if, and tell me if y'all feel this way, it was as if they were saying there's no other coach out there that can coach this team. That's the way Lombardi made it seem. There's no other coach out there. He's the best thing since sliced bread. There's no other coach that can coach this team. And if you just listen to it, you would think like, damn, they're giving away Nick Saban or Bill Belichick and going in another direction. Like, this kid's won 20 championships. The way they're talking, He's had multiple All-Pros and Pro Bowlers and Hall of Famers on his resume. The way Lombardi was talking, I'm like, are they talking about the same guy that coached here that, the last 2 seasons were horrible? Are we talking about that coach? Or are we talking about somebody else? But they did make some points, some key points in there. I get it. But if you just read everything that's coming out, as I said yesterday, she got tired of the things that were being said. And maybe, just maybe, that New England thing pissed her off enough. Like, we ain't having, you want to go down to up to your other team and talk bad about us? Like, come on, you can't do that. We're not having it. And then subsequently after that, more stuff started to trickle out from the facility. Again, I don't want things coming out of my building about my head coach and GM and what's going on. And it's all pro the head coach, and it's negative toward everybody else. She just got tired of it, and she had a right to be tired of it.
This is what bothered me about it, because I think you combine what you just said, Derek, that Vrabel is the all-knowing. I love the greatest thing since sliced bread. I still don't know where that
where did that
came
come
from. I'd love to go. Okay.
Like, how great is sliced bread, really?
I guess back then it was great.
What kind of bread are we talking? Rye bread, sourdough bread?
If we go white bread and do French toast, it's pretty good. I'm just saying.
But you have this, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's clearly coming from Vrabel's camp. Lombardi goes back with Belichick. He goes back with Vrabel. But at the same time, he weaves this web of, hey, I don't know anything about Rand Carthon. Hey, I don't know. I'm not saying he wasn't qualified, but clearly implying that he's questioning his qualifications. Rand Carthon is not some unknown guy. Mm-hmm. His dad, Maurice Carthon, is a Belichick Parcells guy that played for years in the league. Rand Carthon grew up in that world. Has been at 3 different successful franchises and worked his way up to this position. And we act like he's some guy that nobody's ever heard of.
And that's what
he is couch. And I'm not. And it's not just Lombardi. It's a lot of people. And the telling thing from Diana and Joe's article in the Athletic is basically from the start, Vrabel said, "I don't think this guy's ready for the job." Now, that might have been an honest assessment from Vrabel at the start, but that is being taken carte blanche around the league and has everybody questioning Rand as if he's got no credentials at all. And I just
Vrabel, you wasn't qualified for a head coaching job. The crap you did at Houston.
But okay, and let me give you an example too. Lombardi in this, and it's funny because he couches Ryan Cowden as Vrabel's guy, right? That's who Vrabel was suggesting. And he can't even get his name right. Cowling. He calls him Cowling like 4 different times, which tells you, who in the heck knows anything about Ryan Cowden? What's he done compared to Carthon? It's not anything different, right? At least Rand Carthon said, yeah, I remember his dad. He was a great player. He's, Rand played in the league. He's been 3 different places. The 49ers are probably the most successful organization going right now. He's got credentials. So I'm not sitting here telling you Rand is going to be a great GM and they're going to have all kinds of success. I'm just saying he's walking into this with a narrative that's giving him a strike against him, and people are pushing this narrative, and it's coming from Vrabel's people, right? And so that's unfair to Rand Carthon. And I'm just going to say it right off the bat. Give the guy a chance. I'm not sitting here telling you he's going to be wonderful.
I don't know what they're going to be moving
I don't know
forward.
if he's done a good job or not. It's all twisted around. Rand Carthon has nobody in the media that's singing his tune. He has no narrative being pushed. Vrabel does. Vrabel's got a lot of people pushing his story, big time. Doesn't mean it's the wrong story. They could be dead on right. Maybe Rand has no idea what he's doing. But it is coming all from Vrabel's people. Make that clear. That's how you play the media game. Rand probably needs to get into that game, honestly. He needs to go out and get his message out there himself. He admitted it in the press conference. I probably need to connect with the fans a little bit more. He also needs to play the media game.
And maybe that's why
this is how it works.
That's why you were not upset, but you were just like, man, you got to give us more in regards to what's the message,
Right.
what's moving
and
forward.
Also,
Yeah,
he
I get
probably,
that.
and he's also being used against him. For him to come out and say, we agreed on everything,
It's just not true.
It
But he's
clearly wasn't
trying-
true.
yeah,
he's trying
to-
not to
yeah.
make waves, and he's
Exactly.
trying to get through the press conference. I understand why he did it, but people are taking that statement and saying, how could that possibly be? And they're right. There's no way that everything was hunky-dory and everything when you go 6-11. It's
Right.
obvious.
And not everyone.
But who does the blame fall on with the Vrabel people? It's all, well, Rand was unqualified. I'm not saying he wasn't qualified or he's not Vrabel's guy. I mean, it's just all of these things that make Rand out to be some unknown guy that nobody had ever heard of, that had no business getting the job. And I don't see that when I look at his credentials and I look at his background. And it's ironic, they both come from the Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick tree.
And
Okay, before you answer that,
Originally-
before you say that, what were Mike Vrabel's qualifications to be a head coach before he got that job? I'm not saying Vrabel turned out to be a good coach, and I think he is a good coach. But when you say, well, this person's not qualified, and he sort of came up through the ranks, did all the things that other GMs do, and you say, well, he's not qualified. What made you qualify to be a head coach? That's people got to answer that question to me.
And to clarify, I did not say he was.
No,
unqualified, but I know that you were
I'm
speaking
saying-
just kind of
I'm
in
just
general,
saying,
in general terms. And you bring up, yesterday whenever I wanted to hear
Yeah.
the vision from Rand, because I do think looking at Rand's history and comparing his resume to some other GMs across the league, he is qualified. He does have the resume. Does that mean that Rand Carthon is going to bring a Super Bowl to Nashville? I don't know. Does that mean that he's going to crash and burn in Nashville? I don't know. I hope not. I hope that Rand is successful. But for the unknown side of things, sure, on the inside in the football world, I'm sure Rand Carthon was very much so unknown. To Titans fans, they didn't know who Rand Carthon was. You don't know who the director of personnel is for teams across the league. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted Rand to take the opportunity that he had to build trust in this Titans fan base. And how do you do that? You assure them that everything's going to be okay and I have got it handled. So that kind of ties it back to his press conference earlier this week. But, you talk about the narratives. One narrative that we had, over the past few weeks and months is that Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel did not get along. Of all of the reports that we've gotten, I think we've kind of squashed that narrative. Whether it was the Athletic article from Diana and Joe, and we'll get deeper into that, or kind of what Michael Lombardi pointed out, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't a relationship problem with Rand and Mike. It was more of a relationship problem with Mike and Amy. But Michael Lombardi kind of shed a little bit of light on that in the podcast. This was Michael Lombardi on Rand and Mike's relationship.
it's been a good run here with Mike Vrabel. Like I said, multiple division titles. There were the 1 seed a few years ago there. He's a really good coach, and everybody has been tripping over themselves saying, wow, like this guy's going to be one of the top coaches. What do you think Amy Adams Strunk thinks right now, 24 hours later, when everyone is singing the praises of Mike Vrabel, and that's the guy who she just fired?
Well, she's thinking that I didn't have harmony within my organization. I had conflict, and I don't like conflict. I want everybody to get along. I want a collaborative effort. I want everybody to sing Kumbaya. And she naively, like a lot of people, me included, think when I was very young in my career, I thought you could find another good coach. I thought they were out there. And what you find is, as you go through, there's very few leaders. There's very few men that have the capacity to lead and to think on a high level. Very few. There's very few coaches who see the game from 35,000 feet. The Belichicks, the Parcells, the Mike Tomlins, those guys are hard to find, very hard to find. And even when you think you have one, there's a pretty good chance you don't, considering the fact that of the 32 positions in the National Football League, 7 of them are open every year. So the track record of firing a coach, like, okay, if you're playing poker and you know that 1 in 7 jobs are going to open up, and you have a really good hand, wouldn't you hold on to your hand?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, in decision-making, wouldn't you hold on to your hand? Wouldn't you say, okay, Rand, Mike, we got to make this work. Mike, you're going to have to mentor Rand more. Rand, you're going to have to understand Mike more. I don't know how it was all going in the building. I don't know that. I just know there was a natural conflict because, as I've experienced in my career, when you're not on the same page, when you're not aligned with everybody, you can say you're on the same page, which is what Carthon's saying. He's saying in his release, Mike and I never had an issue. You can say that, but there's a reason he's gone. And it's because the organization, as the owner says, wasn't aligned. So again, we're back to what the difference between alignment and being on the same page. And this is what the owner doesn't understand. She's listening to people in the league office. She's listening to people outside our building. This is who you should hire. This is what you should do.
That's coming from one camp. And let's just put yourself in Rand Carthon's shoes, okay? You get a sense, and this is coming from the Athletic article, that Mike Vrabel wants more say. They fired John Robinson. I think in the article it says, I think I've earned it, right? And look, guy had a lot of credentials. He was winning. I think Mike Vrabel is an outstanding coach. If they decided to bring him back, as I've been saying, if he sold me on, I'm going through this rebuilding process, face the reality, this team was going to be in a rebuilding process this year, and it was known for a year, then okay, I agree with a lot of what Lombardi is saying. He's a leader. He is a special leader of men, I think that's got a lot going for him. I don't disagree with that, but put yourself in Rand Carthon's shoes. You come in, you get a sense that Vrabel wants more say. You get a sense, I'm sure, Rand Carthon realized that Vrabel's first choice was another person. And it goes as far in that article to suggest that Vrabel said, okay, let's bring Rand in, but let's make him the number 2 guy. Yeah. That promotes Rand, and I'll have my guy be the number 1. Rand's not ready for the job. So you get this job knowing that the coach from day one doesn't think you're ready for the job. So he's supposed to go in and start doing everything his way and try to exert his power? No. What would you do? You'd say, Coach, what do you need? You're the man. You tell me what kind of players you want. I'll try to get those players. That's what he did, I believe. So, but he's starting off with a strike against him. Right? And you've got this perception now that's being, well, he's not Vrabel's guy. Amy brought him to the table. The league brought him to just all of these things that I don't know if Rand Carthon is going to be a great GM or not. But just put yourself in his shoes, and then I think it explains a lot of how he went about it this year.
And another thing there, too, is I hear the bloviating about how great of a coach Mike Vrabel is. And it's not just Michael Lombardi. It is so many people that I've seen on Twitter or heard on national news outlets. I think Mike Vrabel is a good coach. But to act like there's no way you could replace Mike Vrabel, save it. You won 6 of your last 24 games, okay? Like, there are a lot of mistakes that Mike Vrabel made, a lot of missteps that Mike Vrabel made along the way. It does not have the skins on the wall nor the credentials to warrant that kind of support. But let's continue this conversation coming up next with Mike Lombardi's head, and we'll continue to get into Joe and Diana's Athletic article. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Let's talk Loan Pronto for a moment. The rates are down. It's January, and it's time to get the finances in order. And there's an engine for you. Loan Pronto has the Express Equity line of credit. So it's even better now because they'll get you a better mortgage rate to use this great engine, the Equity Express line of credit. Get thousands of dollars to address your financial needs in a very short period of time with a lot less legwork than it used to be. There used to be a ton of paperwork. It was a process. Now you can get it in as little as 5 days. So take that money, address your financial needs. Get that credit card bill that's been nagging you. You're paying big interest. Knock it down to zero. Don't put it off. Start the new year off right with a cash influx. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, tomorrow is your chance to participate in Predators Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow at 8:45 a.m. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Breaking down kind of the latest of what we've heard from the national media, where we didn't get a lot of clarity, maybe locally, about what went on behind the scenes of what led to Mike Vrabel's firing, but we've heard a lot, maybe on the national level. We heard Mike Lombardi in the GM Shuffle podcast, but I got to give Joe Rexrod a whole ton of credit because his article in The Athletic and his collaboration with Diana Rossini is incredibly insightful and very eye-opening. Some of it made my jaw drop, quite frankly, and there was one aspect of that we were kind of discussing at the break, and we'll break down all of these bullet points, kind of our takeaways of what Joe Rexrod and Diana Rossini have reported in their Athletic article. One that I wanted to run past you first. In this little tidbit in Joe and Diana's article, they're talking about how while Mike Vrabel was not told that the next general manager was going to be Ryan Cowden, he wanted it to be Ryan Cowden. So it's kind of been out there as Mike Vrabel was told it was going to be Ryan Cowden, and then it was kind of, the wool was pulled up behind his eyes, that it was just Ran Carthon. Mike Vrabel wanted it to be Cowden. But this little tidbit here. Cowden ran the entire 2023 draft board, but was fired immediately after the draft. He has consistently drawn general manager interest from other NFL teams and was close to getting the Steelers GM job last year. He ran the draft. He ran the draft board. So
according to the report. Now,
according to the report.
Who do you think supplied that information to Diana and Joe? Somebody from Vrabel's camp, I'm going to say. I would love to hear Ran Carthon on the record, off the record, saying, so what was he was just sitting there, I guess, even though he ran all the press conference. He didn't do anything with the draft?
Well, I'm not saying that he didn't do anything with the draft, but this is just what the report says. I'm just saying this is a report, but where is it coming from? It's coming from Vrabel's people. I don't know if the team would say, oh, yeah, he ran the board. And then they let him go right after the draft. He ran the draft board, but then we don't want him after that. That doesn't make any sense. What the heck was that? What's that all about? If you ran the draft board, wouldn't you want to keep him?
Yeah, a lot of it's kind of, convoluted, and it's just so much stuff that's going on here, which leads me back to setting things back in order. This happens when things are out of order. All of these, he said this, she said that. No, my guy was in charge of this. Now, I didn't want him as the guy. I thought this guy was going to be my guy. All of this mess that is coming out, she wanted to set it all back in order. There's too much stuff coming out, and it's not positive for this franchise moving forward. Again, I go back to what I said. It's like she wanted her franchise back. He possibly could have, used the relationship that he built with Miss Amy. He took advantage of it. Mm-hmm. I believe he did. He took advantage of that relationship. And she came to a point where it's like enough is enough. Things are out of order. It's not about the stuff on the football field. We can get another coach. There's no Bill Belichick's or Nick Saban's running around here, but we can get a coach that can win. And maybe possibly what we want to do is win a Super Bowl. We can get that coach. We may get it on the first run. We may get it on the second run. Mm-hmm. But we're going to he's not the end-all, be-all. And I think, like you said, Willie, around this camp, the narrative is he's the end-all, be-all. And you can't get any better if you move away from him. Well, she's saying, like, listen, all this stuff that is coming out, you're not debunking it, Vrabel. When you come back from New England, all this stuff is being said. You're not squashing it. Okay, then other stuff starts to happen. Leaks start to happen that is more pro you than pro the organization. There's a problem with that. Mm-hmm. Again, you haven't won a Super Bowl here. You haven't even been to a Super Bowl here. Yes, you are a good coach. But you, like you said, one player is not bigger than the organization. Why is one coach bigger than the organization? Especially when you ain't won nothing. When you haven't won anything in regards to Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. You can win conference. You can win your division. You didn't even win your conference. You won your division because why? Let's be honest about it. The division was horrible. It was horrid. It got better this year, and you see what happened. They didn't win it the last 2 seasons. So to me,
The Titans were horrible.
the Titans were horrible too. But to me, you didn't have, at least from my opinion, you are a good coach, but there are a bunch of good coaches in the NFL, and you didn't do enough to warrant maybe some of these things that were going on, these leaks that were going on. You're not that good. I need to set my franchise back in order, and we need to move forward.
Here's another question I have about the draft question, because I think it's a very intriguing. It's one of the most intriguing things that they uncovered that I don't think any of us have heard before.
Yeah.
That Ryan Cowden was still there and still influencing the draft. When you say run the draft board. But let's
So
put
did
it,
he pick the
let's-
players?
well,
What does run the
put it
draft
in,
mean?
This is
Run the
what I don't know.
draft
Run the
board.
draft
Board.
board.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means exactly, but let's also put it in perspective. Rand Carthon was hired on January 18th. Okay, so by the time he gets in there, comes in, the college football season has already been played. All of the scouts are there. They've done their evaluation. Now you're going in the combine. So he's getting in, midstream. And as he said a number of times at the time and even at the press conference the other day, he didn't have the authority to come in and clean house and that wouldn't make any sense anyway. So he's trying to blend in as the bus is already moving full speed down the road. But the implication in there is that, well, Rand didn't even run the draft. He didn't even know what he's doing. Well, there's reasons why, but it's all designed to make Vrabel look really good. Hey, my guy ran the draft, and look at the draft. It's pretty good. And, hey, I don't really know if Rand had anything to do with the draft. You see what I'm saying? There's a narrative being pushed, and it's coming from one side of the table. It's not the team side. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the team's real happy about that.
I would not think that the team is very happy about that they sided with Rand Carthon, that they decided to hold on to Rand Carthon, continue with him as the general manager, and then this is put out that Ryan Cowden ran the draft board. Now, I don't know if it's a narrative. I don't know if it's the truth. I don't know how much involvement Rand Carthon had in the board. I don't know. I don't know if I can step away from that and say, well, Rand Carthon had nothing to do with the Titans draft. I also can't say that if this is the truth, that Rand Carthon had everything to do with the draft. It kind of makes that transitional period between when Rand Carthon came in, before he got hired, draft prep, Ryan Cowden still here after he left, makes that all very fuzzy. But it does kind of makes me raise an eyebrow about Rand's involvement at the beginning of kind of the 2023 year draft moving forward. Elliot Friedman will join us coming up next a little bit earlier today. We'll get into Luis Saros. What's the concern level there? We'll chat with Elliot Friedman about that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106 for the game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and The Game Nashville app. Joining us now, a little bit earlier than he normally does, is Elliot Friedman of the 32 Thoughts podcast and Sportsnet. Elliot, appreciate you being flexible with your schedule today. I know Willy wanted to chat with you before he had to head to Dallas. Of course, the Predators taking on the Dallas Stars tomorrow night. But I want to start with the Nashville Predators here. I know after the Preds fell to the Ducks 5-3 earlier this week, I heard all of the outrage on social media of, UC Soros isn't playing well anymore. You need to make a change. I heard a lot of Predators fans calling for, activation from Milwaukee, maybe a change up in the roster. Have you heard anything about potential changes, and maybe what would your message be to Predators fans that went borderline nuclear after that loss to Anaheim?
That doesn't sound borderline nuclear. That sounds like a full mushroom cloud out there, Carolyn.
You should hear the nuclear from some of these fans around these parts.
Yeah, be careful. I would say be careful what you wish for. Because the moment let's just say for argument's sake, you were to trade a UC Saros, the moment that happened, you know who you'd be screaming for? You'd be screaming for UC Saros. So, I don't think he's going anywhere. Barry Trotz is on record as saying he'd like to keep him, and I don't have any reason to believe that Barry Trotz is lying or fibbing when he's telling that. I do think you want to keep him. Obviously, maybe he's not at the level of that you guys have expected or hoped for lately, but I think that's more just of the high standard he's set, and I think he's going to be fine. Like Saros to me is the last guy I'd be worried about. I think honestly, when it comes to what you guys are thinking, I think one of the biggest questions you guys have is what's your defense going to be going forward? You've got some contract situations you've got to deal with. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I've heard Carrier has played pretty well. So I think that he is kind of solidifying his spot, I think, in the future of the Predators there. But between him and Fabro, and I know you guys really like Spencer Stastny a lot, I just think that one of the key things that you guys are figuring out here is what your defense is going to look like long term, because you have some contract situations to figure out here.
Elliot Friedman is with us, 32 Thoughts podcast in Sportsnet. Looking a little bit more nationally, you see the news coming out that Corey Perry will be able to rejoin another NHL team. So what kind of went on behind the scenes there with Corey Perry, and of course the NHL Players Association kind of pushing this along so he's eligible to sign with another team?
The one thing I would say is, and I kind of corrected it when I wrote it the second time, I shouldn't have used the word eligible. He wasn't ineligible. Like, he wasn't technically in a position where he couldn't be signed. But I think everybody kind of realized that you weren't going to sign him if the league was going to stand in the way, right? And I think that is a key thing to recognize here. He was eligible to be signed, but no team was going to do it if you were worried that the league wasn't going to wasn't going to be happy about it. So, Perry asked for a meeting with the league. He spoke to them. I think he kind of explained everything from his point of view, including some of the help. He'd said that when his contract was terminated, he was going to get help for some alcohol use. I think he told them about what he did there. And I understand that he left with the blessing, and that the league wasn't going to stand in his way, and that, he could go ahead and sign with someone. And I do think there is interest, Carolyn. We don't have a clear picture of exactly yet what happened here with him in Chicago. And I don't want to minimize anything because I don't know the full details. But the one thing that's clear here is that once a contract gets terminated, the Players Association has 60 days to decide if they're going to grieve that. And there is definitely a feeling here, and again, I don't have all the details, so I'm just relaying what I've heard secondhand. There's definitely a feeling here that if it wasn't Chicago, because of everything they went through with the Kyle Beach situation, that they don't believe that the contract would have been terminated. So they have until January 29th to decide if they're going to appeal this, and the belief is they will, although there's just nothing formal yet at this point in time. So I think what the general feeling is here is that this is something, while obviously something that shouldn't have happened, it's not something that would have resulted in the termination in just about any other situation, but an organization that knows it's been through something. And, one of the things that Kyle Davidson, the GM, did when he met with the players about it was tell them that we cannot afford any scandal, no matter how slight it is. So I think this was a case where a team was just being very careful, and whatever happened shouldn't have happened, but it doesn't sound like anything that anyone feels should prevent Corey Perry from playing in the NHL.
Now, Elliot, let's get back to the Saros thing. I'm with you. I think Saros will eventually sort of work its way out of this and hopefully start playing a lot better. He gets back to being the old Saros. But if he continues to struggle moving forward, do you see a scenario where they bring the young guy, Askarov, up and start to let him get some minutes? I know Lankinen is there, but Lankinen, has another year on this contract, or this may be the last year.
He's a free agent at the end of the season.
So just letting a young guy come in and sort of get some time in the NHL.
Well, I mean, the one thing is that, he obviously started to, Derek, and you can see the potential. I see why this guy was drafted as high as he was. He's a really talented young goalie. The only thing is, unless you want to carry three goalies, which is not what anybody likes to do. There's a couple teams doing it this year, and it's far from ideal. Either someone has to be hurt or someone has to be put on waivers to bring Askarov up. And, you're obviously not putting Saros on waivers. I don't think you'd put Lankinen on waivers either, because you'd lose a guy like him. He's played very well. So I think for this year, it just unless Nashville suddenly decides for whatever reason they want to carry three goalies, I think they just stay with the two. If someone gets hurt, Askarov gets his chance. He plays as much as he can in Milwaukee, but I think we all see where this is going. It's likely after this year that Askarov is going to be up. Whatever you guys do in goal, and I assume it's going to be signed Saros, that Askarov is going to be up next year, and he's a big part of your future.
And Lankinen just got a big win for them at Dallas last Saturday, and we'll see who goes tomorrow in Dallas. I would think Lankinen might get a shot.
Very well.
Yeah.
Very well. Very well.
Elliot, the TNT guys got in on this discussion, and we've been doing it in this market too. If you look at the surge of the Oilers, and they've only played 37 games, the Predators are right at the halfway point of their season. But the Oilers are playing just lights out right now, so it's hard to envision them not making the playoffs. And so the discussion is, look, is it too early to say halfway through that there's almost 7 spots in the Western Conference playoff race spoken for?
Well, are you trying to ruin the drama here, Willie?
No, I'm just pointing out that the Predators are in a great spot, right? The Predators are right in this thing, but there's a lot of teams that are really looking for one. They're only playing for really one spot when you get down to it.
I would agree with that. As long as Edmonton doesn't, fall off the face of the earth like they did earlier in the season, I agree with you. They should be perfectly fine. And I would say that. There's a race. Some teams have certainly fought their way into it. There's no question that the Predators have had greater staying power this year than a lot of us expected, especially in that week early in the season where, things were really falling apart and looked kind of dire.
They were 5-10.
Yeah, they were 31st in the league. I think we were all sitting there saying, okay, that's it. We don't have to worry about Nashville anymore. But I would think that's fair. The other thing, too, is Edmonton's got those games in hand, right? They're at 37 games. So you look at it and you say the math is really, really good for them. So, yeah, I think that's fair. But I think you guys are very much in this. Whatever people were expecting from the Predators at the beginning of the season, I think they've sent a message that they've got staying power, and you better take them seriously because they're part of it.
So then you look at that next group of teams, the Predators, the Kraken, who are back in it. They're playing really well. Arizona, the Blues, the Flames, and then the Wild, who we've been watching closely because they've just played 2 games in Dallas. They're injury-riddled right now, and they lost both. So let's start with the Wild, with where they are right now and their outlook with their lack of health and cap issues. So where do you think their mindset is right now?
Well, I think they're a team that always tries to compete for the playoffs. They got their fired coach bounce, and now they're, like I didn't really realize it until Michael Russo tweeted it last night, but they're 20 points behind the Jets. And the other thing is that the Wild's math is not as good as anyone else's there. Like they're down, got 38 points, and they've played a lot of games. Now I think they're kind of not the team that will just give up. They've got some young players. I think they'll keep building. Like I don't know if I see them trading any of their core players. But maybe some of the players on the fringes, some guys who they look at and say maybe their contracts are up or they're not as serious about the future, but they just bet on their core and they just signed a whole bunch of guys. So I don't know if I expect them to pivot that quickly, Willie. But this has been a tough year for them on and off the ice. And I do recognize that sometimes you make decisions after seasons like this one, but I expect them to. Like the one thing about Guerin is he's really impulsive. It's kind of the way he runs the team. But when you have seasons like this one, sometimes the best thing to do is take a deep breath and just let it play out before you do anything rash.
So the same is true, and I see a lot of articles up in on Sportsnet and things like that where in your circles about the Flames who they come in here a week ago and get a big win against the Predators. Then they turn around and lose a couple, including one in Chicago against a decimated Blackhawks team. They turn back and win. So they're right in the middle. They're 4 points behind the Predators, same amount of games. Where's their head at, knowing that they've got a lot of contract decisions to make?
Well, I think they're willing to move players. Lindholm, I think, will move. Tanev, I think, will move. The one I think they've thought about keeping is Hanifin. But that one is weird. That one goes in and out. Like, Hanifin had a verbal deal earlier in the year, and then they lost a couple of games, and he kind of changed his mind. And so I always wonder about that. And now I've heard they've started talking again. Like, Hanifin he's a younger guy. He's about to turn 27. So I can see a reason for keeping him. But I wonder if you keep him, are you only punting this down the road for a couple of years? The one thing I think is that the Flames just haven't had the traction on some of their guys that they kind of hoped to. So that's, but their guys are definitely available. Like Lindholm, the center, everybody kind of wonders about Colorado with them and whether or not that's going to be the player that Colorado goes after. But that's a move that might have to be closer to the trade deadline because Colorado's got no cap room. So I don't think the Flames have changed. I think the only thing that maybe is different is maybe they're thinking about keeping Hanifin again. But other than that, I think they're looking to move guys.
So that kind of brings you down to a group of 4 or 5 teams for 1 or 2 slots, depending on whether you think the Oilers are a shoe-in or not. So that it's just an interesting outlook.
Put it this way, I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised.
I'm with you. I'm penciling them in. If not, I'm not putting a Sharpie or a pen, but I got them in pencil as one of the spots.
They have erasable ink now, Willie. You can use that. You can. The other thing too about you guys is I still think you guys are going to look at the bigger picture. It's not going to be about this year for you. It's going to be about what's the thing that makes sense in the long run. And I still wonder about you in Vancouver as trade partners, whether it's a Garland or a Kuzmenko or something like that. Those players have some term. They play the way that you guys, they can help you guys a bit. I don't know how I don't think you guys are climbing over walls to go get these players, but I think you've had conversations with them. But again, I think you guys have a luxury of you don't need to rush into anything. I think you feel that you have cap room. It's the most valuable thing you can have in the NHL, especially now is cap room. Like, you guys are going to have some choices here, and I think the one thing about Barry Trotz is he's patient, right? He's very patient, and he sees a big picture. And I think anything that the Predators do is not going to be about 2024. It's going to be about where you're going beyond 2024.
All right, so we've got to get your take on the soap opera between Cutter Gauthier and the Flyers. I just have this vision, and all of us, we have this perception of different markets, right? And you know it just like anybody else. But Philadelphia fans have a reputation. I'm
Yeah, they
thinking of
won't-
JD
Oh.
like this very
JD
much.
Drew, right? All the throwing batteries at a guy who didn't want to sign in the Philadelphia market. Scott Boras, the ultimate villain agent. That guy was toast before it ever started. Every time he went to Philly, but now you got a guy 19 years old, basically. I guess to use the term ghosted, right? He just ghosted the Flyers. Said, "I'm not
Yeah.
returning your calls. I'm not playing for you." What happened there?
So last year, Chuck Fletcher was the GM of the Flyers, and he was fired on March 10th, and on March 11th, Cutter Gauthier's season ended at Boston College. They played their last game. They lost in their conference quarterfinals, I think it was, and his season ended. And I believe that Cutter Gauthier thought he was going to join the Flyers. I do. And it didn't happen. And I think it happened for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you'll remember, last year was a really hard end of the year in Philly. They didn't have a lot of cohesion. The dressing room were at each other's throats. There was the Pride Night fiasco there. I think that, well, I don't think, not everybody in the dressing room hated each other, but there were clearly some issues. And I just don't know if Philly wanted to bring him into that. And, so I just think that the player, I think, was hoping to join the team, and they kind of indicated to him, and also, too, they had 16 games left, and if he had played 10 of them, he would have what's called burned or used up the first year of his contract, so he would have been 1 year closer to getting his second contract. And I think the player thought that he was going to be up there, but, the Flyers weren't as sure about it. Keith Jones wasn't hired until May 11th. Daniel Briere didn't become the full-time GM until May 11th. It was just such a period of chaos in the organization. And I don't think they felt they were insulting the kid at all. I think they were just like, you know what? Like, if you want, I think they broached, you want to start in the American Hockey League, play the end of the year there, and then you'll join us next year. And I just think, I don't think the Flyers meant to insult him. I think it was, they thought they were doing the right thing, but I think it just got taken a different way. And, I compared it to Cool Hand Luke a bit. What we've got here is a failure to communicate. And I think the communication broke down, and I think the Flyers always felt they could fix it. They really liked Gauthier. I think they really felt they could fix it. And I think in the kids' eyes, it just wasn't fixable. And you know what? You're entitled to not play for the team that drafts you. You have to sit out a while, or you can force a trade. It's not impossible. The one thing I just disagreed with is I think he should have just told them exactly what it was. That's all.
Elliot, true or false, Peter Laviolette, the next head coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Or the Patriots.
He's
He grew up in Boston, right?
He's got that kind of same look as Saban. When his eyes bear in on you, you do not want to be on the receiving end of that. I think it would be hilarious if Parcells was if Belichick was the next head coach at Alabama.
Just a little swap, Saban to New England. Elliot, appreciate you for joining us. Appreciate your time and appreciate you for being flexible with us today. Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts, Sportsnet Podcast. Appreciate you, Elliot. We'll chat next week.
Take care, guys.
All right, appreciate it. Willie D, you are en route to Dallas. Big one for the Predators against the Stars tomorrow night.
Tough one, tough place to win. Big win for the Predators there on Saturday. Let's see if they can replicate it, or a little rematch action. But they'll have the Stars' attention, that's for sure.
Absolutely they will. Willie D, appreciate your safe travels to Dallas. Coming up next, we'll continue to break down some of the bullet points in Joe and Diana's article, our reaction to it, and just providing a little bit more insight as to what exactly happened behind the scenes. How did we get here with Mike Vrabel and the Titans organization? We'll get into that coming up next. And, of course, into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
This time of year, people, we reflect on the past and make plans for the year ahead. If you made a resolution to lose weight this year and you diet and exercise but still struggle to lose the pounds, it could be because your hormones are imbalanced. Call my friends at Cool Springs MD. Their experienced doctors specialize in identifying which of your hormones need to be balanced and provide a tailored solution designed just for you. Imbalanced hormones can also cause more problems than weight loss. You may experience mood swings, fatigue, and a decrease in sex drive. Hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, can help people. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and his team understands it's a frustrating cycle and want to help you be the best you can be this year. There's no better time to achieve that healthy lifestyle. So what are you waiting on, people? Give Cool Springs MD a call today for an appointment. Here's the number. I know you already probably got it locked into your phone, but if you don't and you're just hearing this message, here's the number. 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458. Or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com.
Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are at home facing Louisiana Tech with pregame beginning at 7:30 p.m. and tip-off at 8 p.m. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase will be joined by Mitch Light of The Athletic in 30 minutes. Willy D is en route to Dallas. Predators taking on the Dallas Stars tomorrow night on the road. But right now I want to take a deep dive into Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini's report in The Athletic. Maybe shedding a little bit of light of exactly what went on behind the scenes between the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel. In this article, it's kind of more of a timeline more than anything. Bullet points of, okay, this is what happened at this point that rubbed the owner the wrong way. This is what happened at, fast forward 2 months. This is what happened to kind of fracture the relationship between Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk a little bit more. So, D-Mase, if it's cool with you, we'll just go bullet point by bullet point. Let's go through this timeline. So, rewind to when John Robinson was let go. When John Robinson was fired with the Tennessee Titans. Let's kick it off with the first bullet point highlighted here by Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini. First and foremost, they talk about evolving the team, modernizing the team, adding in more analytics. Go back a couple of years ago when John Robinson was at the helm, and there was a viral graphic that went out, and it was a breakdown of every single NFL team's analytics department. The Titans didn't have one. So bringing in Rand Carthon, he brought in that element and belief in analytics. That's what Chad Brinker is as assistant general manager, as kind of the head of the analytics department. One little tidbit in here talks about how Mike Vrabel was on board for bringing in analytics, but there was a disconnect between the coaching staff and analytics. Well, analytics was used a lot in terms of player scouting and possibly the draft process. There was a disconnect there between the coaching staff and analytics with, going for 2, going forward on 4th and 3, whatever it might be. And how it even cites in this article about how when Mike Vrabel decided to go for 2 against Miami, the analytics department told them, hey, don't go for 2. Decided to go for 2 anyways. Obviously, it ended up being, a good decision because he won the football game. But kind of, I look at that there and say, well, the analytics department, the player development, the scouting, that seemed like that's all Rand Carthon's side of things. Yet there was a disconnect between analytics and the coaching staff. Well, that falls on Mike Vrabel for that kind of lack of communication.
Yeah, I'm sure the analytics, and there's a place for analytics, and I'm not going to sit here and say there's not. I think as the world starts to evolve, as sports starts to evolve, analytics, whether you like it or don't, analytics become a big part in what you're doing from a sports standpoint. Analytics become a big part of everything that we do, from finance to everything else. They've been using the analytics and finances forever. So now they're starting to use it more in football, but there's still also that element of the feel of the game. I'm sure when Vrabel wanted to go for 2 versus Miami, the analytics said no. Don't go for 2 yet. And it was probably relayed to him. But he felt the game. He had a feeling for the game and said, no, we're going to go for 2. Now, you go for 2 and you make it and subsequently you win. I'm not necessarily upset that we won or that you went for 2. You asked my opinion, and I gave it to you based on the analytics. Analytics said, no, don't go for it. But then you go for it. You're the head coach. You go for it. We get it. We're good. I think maybe that little portion is being blown up a little bit too much, because there's always going, whether it's analytics or for a feel of the game, there's always going to be this back and forth between the head coach and maybe the OC or the head coach and the DC. Should we go for it? Should we do this? I got a feel for the game. What does what do you think? Well, the analytics says this is what we do. All right, I heard you. I feel you, but it's just a feeling within me. Let's go for it. You asked my opinion. I gave it to you. Now you chose not to use it. We still scored. I'm good. It's not like, listen, it could be that the analytics said don't go for it. You went for it. You won. They still mad at you. How can that be? I don't know if that can. I vision it as being what I just said.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you want? Hey, should we go for it? Well, the analytics say we shouldn't go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I heard you. I got to feel.
I'm still gonna go for it.
We got to do it. Okay. We do it. It's your team. You score, everybody's happy. So I don't know if that's a big story or not. I mean, but obviously with all this other stuff coming out, it tends to become a bigger thing than maybe it really was.
And my philosophy on analytics, I think it's a tool, and I don't think that you should be married to them. That I don't need analytics to tell me something that's not the truth. I don't need to compound all these numbers and multiply them by 1,000 and then add a percentage sign, and that tells me that, so-and-so is a better player than so-and-so. No, I can see things with my own eyes. I don't need to be married to the analytics. I think that the analytics thing and the miscommunication between the analytics department and the coaching department was a symptom of Amy Adams-Strunk not feeling like Mike Vrabel fully embraced this maybe evolution of the football team, or a new kind of feel of the football team. And that really was what my biggest takeaway from the article was, that kind of highlighting all of these points. The other thing that really stood out to me that we touched on earlier, Vrabel wanted Ryan Cowden to be the next general manager. And Vrabel was never told that it was going to be Ryan Cowden, but this little tidbit here that Ryan Cowden ran the entire 2023 draft board but was fired immediately after the draft.
Now, was there a report that came out that implied that Vrabel thought Ryan Cowden was going to be the GM, and then he was blindsided and ended up being the GM?
I believe you're talking about the Tom Pelissero
report.
The Tom
Pelissero report
last week.
Exactly.
I can pull it up and get exactly what Tom Pelissero said, but essentially my takeaway from that was Mike Vrabel was told it was going to be Ryan Cowden.
Exactly, and I think that's what we were discussing last week. Like,
is that why Mike Vrabel didn't trust Amy?
Exactly. Is that why Mike Vrabel didn't trust Amy? Because you had, conveyed to the head coach that this was going to be your guy, and then all of a sudden it's not your guy. But that's not what, Joe and Diana has wrote in this article. He was never told that Ryan Cowden would be the guy. So again, which one is it? Is it he was told or he wasn't told? Well, based upon reports last week, it seemed like he was told that Ryan Cowden was going to be the guy. But now, based upon this one, no, we never told you Ryan Cowden was going to be the guy.
Vrabel wanted him.
Exactly.
But
you
he
wanted
never
him.
Told that.
Absolutely.
And whenever they started the process with Rand Carthon, this was a really intriguing paragraph here to me. It says, when Rand Carthon was close to getting the job, Vrabel told Strunk he liked Carthon but didn't feel he was ready to become an NFL general manager. Vrabel's suggestion: the Titans hire Carthon as the assistant GM, a promotion from his position as number 3 in the 49ers pecking order. Strunk did not take kindly to this suggestion, and team sources believe her and Vrabel's relationship took a hit as a result of that conversation.
Well, I mean, there's a possibility. Again, okay, you gave your opinion as to, how you felt about Rand Carthon. You felt that Ryan Cowden should have been the guy that Ryan Cowden earned. But he sort of went down this same exact path as Ryan Carthon, scouting assistant, area assistant, national scout senior college scout, assistant director. Then when he got to the Titans, director of player personnel, vice president of player personnel, interim general manager. So he basically went down the same path as Rand was going down. What made him more qualified is because he was your guy. He was on the staff last year with you. He's been in the building. That's the only thing I believe, if you're asking me, that made Ryan Cowden, more qualified, because you knew him and you didn't know Rand Carthon. But it seemed like they sort of their career path, how you become a GM. It sort of went down the same road, And plus, Rand has been with 3 successful organizations. Doesn't that mean something?
I think it does. And it could have been, rather than just the resumes and the qualifications, something that stood out to Mike Vrabel perhaps in the interview process.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I find it very hard to believe if Vrabel said, like, let's just pretend I'm Mike Vrabel, you're Amy Adams Strunk, D-Mase. I say, hey, Amy, I really like Rand, but I think that maybe he's not quite ready and maybe he's better fit as an assistant general manager. If it was proposed like that, I don't think that would rub Amy Adams Strunk the wrong way. I don't think that she would start to question or whether or not Mike Vrabel was qualified to be the head coach or if he was fully invested into this collaboration, into whatever her vision might be. I don't know what it was. I don't know how the conversation went down, and I don't know, but I find it very hard to believe that it was just a concern about Rand Carthon's qualifications that started to fracture the relationship.
Yeah, maybe that.
It had to have been a pretty heated conversation.
Yeah, it's not what you say, it's how you say it to people.
Right.
So maybe,
Bless you.
thank you. Maybe it's how he said or how he conveyed, what he was saying to Amy that she didn't like, and then subsequently stuff started coming out of that building, and then you go up to New England and all of that happens, and then more stories starts to come out and more reports starts to come out, and she just got to a point where she was just tired of it, and she has every right as a team owner. Like, listen, if the message out of this building isn't synchronized, we have a problem, and it seemed like it wasn't.
No, it was, and that felt clear, and maybe the root of that, of why she was rubbed so wrong about that suggestion from Vrabel, is another tidbit in this article that says that Mike Vrabel wanted full control over the roster and that he had earned it. Now, that is different than what we heard. Jared came on our show on Tuesday, and from his source said that Mike Vrabel didn't want final say. Mike Vrabel didn't want to be general manager. Mike Vrabel just wanted to coach football. Well, now it's coming out that Mike Vrabel wanted full control over the roster, which was it?
Yeah. Did you want full control? Did you not want full control? You felt you earned full control? Again, I go back to, did you truly earn full control? You earned the right to be the coach. Yes, you have. But did you earn the right to have full control? Let's remember, John was at the helm first, okay? He drafted these guys.
He's a pretty good general manager.
Exactly. He drafted these guys that you leaned on so heavy. He drafted those guys, not you. And as those guys started to mature, your team started to get better. It started to get better under Mike Mularkey, and then subsequently you took the job. So in there, where did you earn the right, like, to have total autonomy over the roster? Exactly. He again
in terms of personnel.
Exactly. Again, he's a good coach. I am not quite. I would love, if I was hired, I would hire him. But I am the sense of I've earned the right to have full autonomy over the roster. Why? Tell me why. Oh, because I went to the AFC Championship. Okay, why? Tell me again, why? I won the AFC South. Why? Why do you deserve? Because if I'm being honest with myself, the GM was in place already. John Robinson, whatever people want to say about John Robinson, he brought DeMarco Murray in here. He drafted Derrick Henry, even though now we know, hey, listen, he probably wasn't on board all the way with it, but he still drafted him.
Yeah.
Drafted. Did he?
Jeffrey Simmons.
Kevin Byard.
AJ Brown.
Guys that were cornerstones for this organization. And as those guys started to get either hurt or they started to get a little bit long in the tooth as far as their career, this team started to decline. You had an opportunity to get this team back on top or back in contention for the AFC South, and you couldn't do it. We can give you the excuses, and they would be 100% right, but you didn't do it. If you believe you should have total autonomy over the roster, then this roster should have been better.
We'll get right into your phones on this coming up next. Your reaction to Joe and Diana Rossini's breakdown in The Athletic. What went on behind the scenes between Amy Adams-Strunk and Mike Vrabel. Right into your phones. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball. The Commodores will be on the road taking on Kentucky. Pregame begins at 5:45 and tip-off is at 6 p.m. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. If you have not read it, I highly recommend that you do read Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini's breakdown in The Athletic, providing a little bit of context as to what went on, not a little bit, providing a lot of context as to what went on behind the scenes between Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk. Some of my biggest takeaways: that Vrabel was never told that Ryan Cowden was going to be the next general manager, but he wanted him. That Ryan Cowden supposedly, reportedly, ran the draft board this past draft. That one thing that rubbed Amy Adams-Strunk the wrong way was Vrabel's visit to New England. In his speech when he said, "It's not like this everywhere, enjoy it," when I said, whoa, what the heck does that mean? That rubbed Amy Adams-Strunk the wrong way. That Vrabel wanted full control, proposed to Amy Adams-Strunk that Rand should be the assistant general manager, didn't feel like Rand was qualified to be the general manager. That's really kind of what set everything in motion of the relationship between Amy Adams-Strunk and Mike Vrabel. Another thing that really rubbed Amy Adams-Strunk the wrong way is with all of these reports that came out from Ben Volen in the Boston Globe and Greg Bedard of BostonSports.com about Vrabel potentially being slated to be the next head coach in New England. It rubbed Amy the wrong way that Mike Vrabel never addressed these things and never denied those reports.
You know what? When that story came out, and, kudos to Jared for pushing sort of the envelope, pushing it, and trying to get an answer. But obviously we didn't get an answer. I didn't want to believe that Vrabel would be that cavalier to go up there and just spew, like, and when he's talking, he's thinking Tennessee Titans. You see what I'm saying? It's like, are you that arrogant to go up to your former team that is enshrining you into their Hall of Fame? You've won Super Bowls there. Are you that arrogant to go up there and be talking about your employer?
You want my honest answer? Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't want to believe he would be that cavalier and that arrogant to do that. Mm-hmm. But obviously, Miss Amy was like, no, you are that. I don't want to believe it, but it's starting to come true that, yeah, you are that way. And that's not what I want in my organization. And she has every right to change her mind. She loved Mike Vrabel, and she wanted him to be the long-term coach. But when those things started happening, those little things started happening, and you didn't address them properly, it's not up to Rand Carthon to address them. It's up to you to talk with you said it, so you tell your owner, explain to your owner what you meant. It's not up to me to come to you and be like, what did you? No, you went out there and you said, explain to me what you meant by that, because there's a lot of things going on, and I don't like it that's coming out. So explain to me what you meant. And I don't think he ever gave her that explanation.
No, because I think it was pretty damning on him that,
exactly.
Hey, look, it's not like this everywhere. Because I want to be here. I don't want to be there.
But again, I didn't want to believe that he was that arrogant and cavalier that he would go to New England and start, spilling the tea, as the young folks say, start spilling the tea about an organization that he's employed by. Yeah. And they love him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, was that when the Think Like a Man was born? When Jared asked Mike Vrabel about his comments in New England?
If you think like, you think like a man.
Think like a
you
man.
don't think like me.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, think like me. Yeah, think like a man.
It could have been. But kudos to him for pushing it.
The audacity for Mike Vrabel to get up in a press conference and say that when he's called on his bull crap.
That's the sort of the I said it, but I don't want to address it type of thing.
Yeah, right.
I know what I meant.
I said
but
it,
I'm
but
not
I
going to tell y'all what I meant
for it.
Yeah.
Let's get into your thoughts on this. Phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Joe is on the line with a thought on Mike Vrabel to the Patriots. What's up, Joe?
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for taking the call. I got to be honest. As a Patriots fan, we just had the greatest coach in NFL history, and he's a defensive guy. Yeah. The last thing I want as a head coach is another defensive guy. If you look atop of the NFL perch right now, whether it's Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, who's quietly back in the playoffs, they get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Prior to that, he had 3 13-win seasons. A lot of the success in the NFL is with offensive-minded coaches. And let's be honest, you can never give any head coach GM control. Belichick had control, greatest coach of all time, and our last 15 drafts have been garbage. We've had 2 All-Pros in the last 15 years, and one of them is Gunnar Olszewski. So, you got to go more toward an offensive way. I believe Vrabel being let go, I think it was mutual. I mean, he's going to get paid. He's going to find another place to go. He's going to land on his feet. And Miss Amy did the absolute right thing. You cannot let him have control of the GM position. We knew that he was not set up for success when he didn't have the GM that hired him. You have to have that. I mean, look at John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and look at their last 6, 7 drafts. You have to have the GM and the head coach have to be hired together.
Yeah.
And, of course, once they let A.J. Brown go, that was a death sentence for Vrabel's coaching career.
Yeah, Joe.
The last thing I wanted to touch on was the going for 2 and the analytics. And D-Mase, you'll appreciate this story. Tony Dungy told this story because prior to Tony Dungy getting hired in 1996 in Tampa, he was Dennis Green's defensive coordinator. And arguably, Tony Dungy is one of the most brilliant defensive minds of all time, architect of the cover 2. And, I mean, the guy almost made it to a Super Bowl with Sean King as a quarterback. Plus, he's a man of such high moral regard and what he does for young people at risk. But it was with the Minnesota Vikings, they were behind by 1 point. The clock had run out, so it was either kick 1 and go into overtime or go for 2. And Dungy, the most conservative coach you would have ever met in your life, you know that, he pulls Dennis Green aside, and he goes, Dennis, if I told you before the game all the preparation, all the work, all the offensive weapons we have on this team, if I told you that all we have to do is get 2.5 yards in one play and we're going to win the game, would you take that chance? And Dennis is like, I would absolutely take that chance. And this is Dungy talking him into it. And Dennis says to Dungy, should I do it? And Dungy's like, no way, you can't do it. And the reason being is that I always agree with the going for 2, especially if you're on the road. Just for that reason, in one play, 2.5 yards, you're going to win the whole game. It's totally worth it. But you have to be ready to get absolutely killed if you don't get it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
appreciate your call, Joe. And it's a good point. When you make a risk like that, you got to be willing to deal with the consequences. Joe, I appreciate your phone call. To his first point about Mike Vrabel to New England, I get it. If Patriots don't want Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
Because you would basically be getting Bill Belichick 2.0.
Exactly.
In football philosophy, and really for the most part in personality as well. Maybe the Patriots want that because
didn't Kraft? It's come out that Kraft, he wants his organization back. Like he wants his It's been for so long. It's been Bill Belichick's organization. When you think of the New England Patriots, you think of 2 people. The third year Robert Kraft, but after you think of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. He wanted his organization back, and I think mutually they probably agreed. It's best to part ways under a bad season, but the relationship is still there.
I have not seen that he wanted his organization back. That could have just been me totally, missing something there. But to the point about, offensive head coach, that's the way that the league is going. I agree that you look at all of the offensive gurus around the league, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. He mentions Matt LaFleur. I say that very hesitantly.
Well, Matt, you got to give it to him. This season, he's earned his stripes this season with what has happened. And
they made the playoffs.
Yes.
They made the playoffs. But
He's getting it back there.
You see offensive-minded head coaches having more success in this league than not. Nick Saban has announced his retirement. Joining us coming up next to break all of that down, what comes next, the domino effects in college football. Mitch Light of The Athletic will join us coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. College football world, sports world was taken by storm yesterday afternoon when Chris Lowe of ESPN broke the news that Nick Saban has decided to retire. And then the football world was then subsequently, about 12 hours later, taken by storm again with the announcement that Bill Belichick has been fired in New England. But let's break down the first one. Nick Saban's retirement. Joining us to help break that down is Mitch Light of The Athletic. Mitch, normally we speak with you on Tuesdays. Had a little bit of breaking news around here of Mike Vrabel being fired on Tuesday, so appreciate you switching around your schedule and joining us today. First, I want to get your initial reaction on Nick Saban deciding to step away from Alabama and ultimately announcing his retirement.
Well, Caroline, I got to tell you, I mean, I had this. I know Chris Lowe broke it. I had it Tuesday afternoon, was all prepared to break the news on your show with you guys, and then I get bumped. So,
wow. That's on us.
That's on us.
I don't blame us, actually. I blame the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
So
I do blame Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk.
Yes. Obviously surprised. I think everyone, not shocked, we knew this day would eventually come. With his age and all that, the timing was, interesting. I guess he, there's a lot of different reports out there. One is that he was, interviewing prospective coaches up to the other day and going about his business. And then you talk to some people and some, I was listening to a podcast with Bruce Feldman and Stu Mandel of The Athletic, my colleagues, and they were both saying they were at the Rose Bowl. They watched him. There were clues that this was going to be it for him. So, who knows when Saban finally made that final decision, but I think we're all surprised. It is, I don't know about you guys, like I've been following college football for a long time and there's been shocking things and there's things like, I guess maybe like Texas and Oklahoma switching conferences or the Big Ten announcement might have been bigger, but I don't know. This might be the biggest college football news that just based on social media and based on everyone's just going, whoa, that we've seen in maybe 10, 20 years.
I think that it's the biggest indication of his impact on this sport is that this is the biggest coach news, I think, of my lifetime, is Nick Saban, especially in the college football level, Nick Saban deciding to retire. And now opens up, I think, the most interesting and most intriguing coaching search in a really long time, maybe ever, honestly, filling the biggest shoes in the history of college football. We saw this morning, Dan Lanning's name was very tightly associated with the opening at Alabama. There was a report coming out that he was in Tuscaloosa. I have heard that report was not true, but now Dan Lanning's coming out and announced to his team that he is going to stay at Oregon. So Dan Lanning out of consideration to fill the Alabama opening. Who should it be, Mitch?
I think you framed it the right way, Caroline. I think it's one of the biggest coaching hires that we've seen, and I'm old enough to remember. I grew up. My dad went to the University of Alabama. Grew up an Alabama fan. I remember. I vaguely remember.
Peace to your dad.
No comment. I was going to say something mean. I remember.
No, I mean because Nick Saban is retiring. That is what I mean.
Yes. Okay. I thought you just meant you're disparaging his diploma.
Oh no, absolutely not. My diploma is from LSU, Mitch. It's not necessarily the most distinguished university out there. I mean because of his coach.
On that. No, I don't want to get in trouble. I vaguely remember Bear Bryant stepping down, retiring, and obviously it was a different time there. And, Ray Perkins took over, and, it did not go well. He's a former Alabama guy, NFL coach, left the Giants and all that. It just tells you how difficult it is to follow a legend. I personally think it's going to be Mike Norvell. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he's a very good coach. He's proven it over 2 different stops. He has proven that he can adapt to the college football landscape, obviously with the transfer portal and all that. I think Steve Sarkisian is an interesting – I don't know about you guys. My opinion of Steve Sarkisian has changed immensely in, 3 or 4 years.
But, Mitch, do you think he leaves Texas?
No, that's what I was going to say. I think I would – he might be my first choice, but I don't think he would leave Texas. I think it's you can – Alabama's obviously had more success, so I'm not going to say it's a lateral job. But as far as potential from this point going forward, with Nick Saban not at Alabama, you can definitely argue Texas is a better job with the recruiting base and all that. So I don't think he would leave. I think he's got a great gig. There's slightly less pressure at Texas maybe than Alabama. So I think Mike Norvell's in that sweet spot where he is an attractive enough candidate to get Alabama fans excited. and he's a guy that would take the job. That's who I think it's ultimately going to be.
Now, with that being said, sort of here's another caveat to it. And I know Jim Harbaugh, there's been speculations that Jim may leave Michigan to go to the NFL.
Sure.
Do you think it would be best for the NCAA, college football, that Jim stays in Michigan? Because now you got Nick Saban as retired, who was the face of college football, so to speak. And then you got Kirby Smart's doing what he's doing in Georgia. Then you got Jim Harbaugh doing up north what hopefully people believe, he can do what Saban has done in Alabama. So do you think it would be smart for the college world that Jim stays in Michigan, considering what has happened?
I hadn't thought about it that way. I hadn't thought about it that way. At first thought I was going to agree with you, but then I think college football is immune to that. I don't think college basketball is immune to that. I think college basketball has been hurt by, Jim Boeheim.
All these legendary coaches.
Right. In both sports are led by the coaches, but college basketball are the personalities in what people knew more, especially with the rosters, the transient rosters. So people identified the sport with those coaches. I don't think football's quite there because I think football's just a more popular sport. So I see what you're saying, but it's sort of like all these other changes, Derek, where we say, oh man, I don't like the transfer portal, but you know what? When the ball kicks off on Saturday, we love it. I don't think doesn't matter who's coaching. So I'll agree with the sport's more fun with characters and the big names, but I don't think it would really affect the big picture of the sport too much.
So now that Nick has retired, is Kirby the guy? Or is it Jim then Kirby?
I think it's Kirby Smart. I mean, there was a stretch there a couple of years ago when we kind of said that Clemson and Dabo Swinney were at the top of the college football world when they'd won 2 of 3, and it's a what have you done for me lately? And I know Jim Harbaugh just won a title, but the fact that Kirby Smart has won 2 in a row and keeps recruiting at that level and will be a preseason number 1. If I'm doing my pecking order, I would have Kirby Smart right now at the top of the college football world as far as best coaches out there. And I might have said the same thing 2 days ago if you would have asked me. But yeah, he's been the only Saban disciple to enjoy that much success at that high a level. I mean, Lane Kiffin's doing pretty well at Ole Miss, but it's not quite the same thing there. So yeah, I think it's fair to say right now you could put Kirby Smart at the top of the food chain.
We'll talk with Mitch Like of The Athletic, discussing the retirement of Nick Saban. Now, we've talked about the job. It's a good job to take. Obviously, Alabama has all the resources that you need, all the money that you need. But, man, oh, man, whoever takes this job, Mitch, do you think Alabama fans are going to want championships right away? Or should there be I know, but I just got to ask you because to me, when you segue from
D-Mase, they're very, very understanding of the situation.
When you segue from a guy that has been so successful and has been the face of this of the NCAA, the next guy that takes this job, conventional wisdom would think you got to give the man a little grace period, maybe a year or 2 to get things back in play. But I don't think Alabama fans are going to do that, which may in turn cause Alabama to do what they did sort of after Bear Bryant, continue to hire coach after coach after coach, trying to reclaim that once fame.
Right, then that's what I was going to say. I'm looking at College Football Reference now after Bear Bryant retired. Ray Perkins, 4 years, gone. Bill Curry, 3 years, gone. Then Gene Stallings had a good run, obviously won a national title. Mike DeBose, 4 years. Dennis Francione had success but said, this isn't for me. Then Mike Shula, then Nick Saban. It's a different era now. The program's it's always been a great program, but it's just had the greatest run. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. The only college sports program almost that seems immune to any dips is Ohio State football.
Yeah.
They have never not been good. And, they've had some 8-4 years. John Cooper, they weren't top 5. But almost every other sport, every other program in any sport has struggled when the right coach isn't there. And with the landscape being what it is now, with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, and everyone trying to win at such a high level, I think Alabama could dip. I mean, are we talking dip to a top 5, top 10 program, top 15? But if they, I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking in 3 years and Alabama's coming off 2 straight 9-3 seasons, just because it's so hard to win at such a consistent level. So, I mean, it's going to be a fascinating storyline over the next few years. But basically, to answer your question is, I'm not going to single out Alabama fans. Any fan base that's won at this level will not put up with anything other than competing for championships on an annual basis.
I see the SEC, other than Kirby Smart, I see the SEC coaches sort of like it was in boxing when Mike Tyson had to leave boxing and everybody was like, thank goodness this guy is gone. Now we can try to win heavyweight championships. Maybe, just maybe, those that are in the SEC other than Kirby are thinking, thank goodness this man retired. So now we at least have a opportunity or a chance.
Kirby might even be thinking that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to make everyone's life easier. And there's no doubt. And here's something too, like, I follow recruiting very closely. And if you look at the struggles of the programs in the state of Florida, I know Florida State's back. They coincided with about 6, 8, 10 years ago with Nick Saban and Alabama going into South Florida and dominating in recruiting. You can go back and look, and you can look maybe like the top 10 players in the state of Florida every year. Alabama was getting 2, 3, 4 of those guys, which in years past, those guys were going to Florida. Those guys were going to Florida State, Miami. So it's not just the SEC. It's just his ability to go in, and especially in the state of Florida, and recruit at such a high level affected so many other programs. Like his tentacles hit everywhere. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, he did not, I know NIL is a different era now, but he did not lose many recruiting battles when he really wanted a kid. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch too. They're all set up for success, support, NIL, all this stuff at Alabama, but the next coach will not be Nick Saban. And so we'll just have to see how high, at what level he continues to recruit.
And that's what makes this such an intimidating job. Going back-to-back 9-3 seasons, I think there's a lot of fan bases in the SEC that would say, okay, cool. I think Alabama fans, the thought of back-to-back 9-3 seasons might make them want to throw up. But Mike Norvell, I think, is a very, very interesting name because not only do I think that he's qualified to take on the job, I also think that he's looking possibly for an out of Florida State, that he's looking at the ACC, the way that it's currently constructed, that they missed out on the college football playoff because of the conference that they play in, that they are about to miss out on millions of dollars that the Big Ten and the SEC are getting from their respective contracts. So I think that's an incredibly attractive opportunity for Mike Norvell. But another name that I've heard thrown out, Mitch, that I want your thoughts on, especially as a graduate from Vanderbilt, a follower of the program, James Franklin.
Jimmy Frank.
Anchor down.
He is, in my opinion, far too sensitive to be the head coach at Alabama. Now, he's at a program that's in a fishbowl. It's a huge fan base, high expectations there. And I'm a James Franklin defender to a degree. I think he's done a very good job at Penn State. Hasn't done a great job when you can't beat your two biggest rivals on a consistent basis, or basically Ohio State other than one time. You can't say someone's done a great job. I think he would recruit at a very, very high level. That's one thing I think he would maintain that. There's just too many other things. Like he's gone through 6 offensive coordinators at Penn State, and sort of like again, I think he's like a little too sensitive. If you look at him in post-game press conference, he doesn't really take the blame very often. Nick Saban will go up there and say, "I didn't have him ready. I didn't coach him up well enough." I think after the Ole Miss game, the bowl game, the Peach Bowl, the first thing he says, he's complaining about a pass interference call in the first quarter. Just don't do that. Post-game. So I just don't think he would handle the pressures of that job very well. So I think he's a good coach. I don't know if he's a great coach. He's a great recruiter. I would not hire him if I were Alabama.
I hear the argument of, imagine what he could do with more resources, more money. It's Penn State. It's not like he's working with some rinky-dink program. But I know Mitch Light is with us of The Athletic. A lot of fan bases in the SEC are now rejoicing now that Nick Saban is gone, looking at some of the domino effects of the transfer portal or maybe pulling some commitments from Alabama's 2024 class. So if you're a program like Tennessee, what does this mean for Vols fans now that Nick Saban has decided to step away from Alabama?
Well, I think you'd put Tennessee in that short list of the schools that it could impact the most. I believe they're staying on as a rival in the new scheduling format. They play them every year. They recruit against them. So I think probably LSU, Tennessee, and Texas A&M maybe, and then Texas, I guess. Some of the schools that kind of think they're in that or want to be in that very, very top tier that will kind of help them the most. So I think it's a good day for Tennessee football when Nick Saban steps down. There's still so much competition out there for players and coaches, and look what happened with LSU this week. Hiring coaches away from conference rivals, and the dollar speaks. And LSU's got a lot of them. Alabama has a lot of them, but Tennessee has a lot of them too. So again, I think it's a good day for Tennessee football.
Now, with that being said, let's sort of segue out of it just for a quick second.
Sure.
Florida State, and we know that Florida State, or many know that Florida State would love to get out of the ACC, but it's going to cost. I think I saw the number somewhere, and it could have been wrong, but it was $500 million for them to get out of their contract. Now, that may have been a little bit too far in regards to the number, but do you think there will be ever a resolution in regards to Florida State? Do you think they will be in a position to get out of the ACC, or will they have to sort of bite the bullet, continue to stay with the ACC, and when they get a chance after the contract is up, then they can get out?
Yeah, I think they're past the point of no return. Mm-hmm. I don't follow this as closely as some of my colleagues do, so I can't confirm the money. I know that it's outrageous, but I think with what happened with the legal getting the lawyers involved with the ACC right after the regular season, suing back and forth, I think they're past the point of no return. The interesting thing is where do they go? I mean, it seems like they would have a destination in place if they were making this move. I don't think it's going to be the SEC. Could it be the Big Ten? Perhaps. But just think how much, we were talking about Mike Norvell earlier, like 2 plays this year, changed the landscape of college football so much. Jordan Travis getting hurt, and Alabama converting the 4th down play against Auburn. If neither of those happen, then the playoffs different. Nick Saban probably still retires, but Florida State goes to the playoff. They might win a national championship, whatever. They don't sue the ACC afterwards because they're not blaming getting the snub on the ACC, and then maybe Mike Norvell's not. If he wins the national championship, he's not even a candidate for Alabama. So it's crazy how stuff works. But Derek, to answer your question, I can't give a timetable, but I do think that it's going to happen at some point where Florida State will not be in the ACC.
Mitch Light, appreciate you, and also appreciate you kind of mixing things up a little bit this week. We'll chat with you next week.
No problem, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it, Mitch. You too. All right, coming up next, we'll deep dive back into Diana Rossini and Joe Rexrode's report, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what went wrong with Mike Vrabel. Our thoughts on that, and of course, your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
People, everyone, if you've set out to lose weight in 2024, chances are it may not be your first time. Setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. Okay, we've all been through it. But at Cool Springs MD, they understand the frustration of this cycle. That's why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program, led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge, addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, counseling, and more. Dr. Lodge and his team don't believe in fad diets or generic plans. Instead, they offer you a personalized program designed to help you achieve your goals faster and easier. Now is the time to break free from the cycle of failed resolutions. Trust an experienced doctor in weight management to help you reach your goals. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge in Cool Springs, MD, is that such people. Call now, make an appointment. Here's the number, 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458, or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com.
Meanwhile, you mentioned it right off the top. We did have another coach move yesterday. Mike Vrabel is out as head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And I would say based on the way this was going the last couple weeks, not totally a surprise. And Rand Carthon, the general manager, came out yesterday and talked about how good the relationship had been between him and Mike Vrabel. My understanding is that is true. This was a decision made by Amy Adams-Strunk, one that she has been mulling for the last several weeks. I would say maybe the last several months, ever since Mike Vrabel went to New England, took part in the Hall of Fame day, and all the rumors started floating about whether or not Mike Vrabel would be the Patriots coach next year, whether he'd be the Titans coach. He never really addressed that internally. I know that didn't sit great with the people there. He went into a meeting yesterday with the owner. It was not a long meeting, and he was presented with a couple different things. Did not sound like he was into it, and he is now out a 6th head coach opening. And I think it's fair to say if the coach job opens in New England, currently held by Hall of Fame coach Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel would certainly be a name to watch.
That was Ian Rappaport on NFL Network. One little tidbit that he mentioned as one of the reasons being Amy Adams-Strunk and Mike Vrabel's miscommunication or the fracture in their relationship was Mike Vrabel's Hall of Fame speech in New England. His trip to New England during his Patriots Hall of Fame induction. And that is one thing that is cited in Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini's breakdown in The Athletic. Joe and Diana cite poor communication, misinterpreted statements, and misunderstandings that all helped bring Mike Vrabel's 6-year Tennessee Titans tenure to a surprising end this week. So a few of my takeaways that have to do with Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk, the reasons that the relationship started to sour. Mike Vrabel wanted full and total control, reportedly by Joe and Diana. Amy Adams-Strunk did not believe that Mike Vrabel had done enough or that elicited full control over the team. One of the things was Mike Vrabel's trip to New England. Some of the things that he said in his Hall of Fame speech that kind of raised some eyebrows from Amy Adams-Strunk. The article says the whole event did not sit well with Amy Adams-Strunk. The articles that came out, this Athletic article from Joe and Diana cites the Greg Bedard Boston Sports Journal article, Ben Volin's article in the Boston Globe of Mike Vrabel and the Patriots, how Robert Kraft called Mike Vrabel his home run choice. The fact that Mike Vrabel did not address that reportedly with Amy Adams-Strunk or Rand Carthon, that Amy Adams-Strunk felt that Mike Vrabel should possibly clarify some of those reports. But the interesting thing here, D-Mase, it's a little bit of a little cloudy here for me. All of those things happened before Diana's report in The Athletic around Thanksgiving that she believes in Mike Vrabel, or rather ownership, higher-ups believe in Mike Vrabel of being the head coach of the future. And that's what this article mentions, that high-level Titan sources told The Athletic in November that the team's long-term plan was to retain Vrabel as coach. But when Amy Adams-Strunk basically, gave Mike Vrabel a full endorsement, quote, she did not get the sense that Vrabel felt the same way, and the communication between them got worse from there. Overall takeaways from this article from Diana and Joe.
One, I think, is a really good article.
It's great.
As far as timelines and going in depth and giving sort of those that haven't truly been following the story, give them a timeline of things that have happened that has put us at this point where Vrabel's no longer the coach. Again, I think we touched on it when it came out that, yes, she loves him now, but things can change.
When does that change?
Exactly. Things can change. So obviously, things started to change, and maybe listen. Yes, it probably, had to do with him going to New England, saying what he said, and listen. I'd be the first one to get on the radio and say, listen, I was wrong in that. I didn't think he meant anything. I just thought he meant the places he's been, because he's been to several different places, not just as a coach, but as a player. So I just thought I was implying that he's not talking about the Titans, maybe talking about other places, because I just didn't think he would be, again, that so brazen to to say that and be talking about the organization that employs him to the organization that he played for and putting him in their Hall of Fame.
You always say, D-Mase, listen to people's words.
Yeah, maybe I should have.
Listen to what they are telling you.
I should have listened to that. I just didn't want to believe that because it's like, you got a job. The owner loves you. Everybody in the city loves you. From a national narrative, they love you, and they think it would be, heresy for the Titans to get rid of you. I mean, I just never thought that there was a possibility. But Miss Amy, she thought otherwise. When you came back, you didn't explain to her what you truly meant. Jared asked the question. You failed to answer the question. And not only that, but then things started to come out that, I liken it to if our show is doing something, we're discussing things amongst one another, and maybe we're not on page with one another, but that's a part of the show, and then it starts to get leaked out. Well, Willie wanted this, and Derek wanted this, or Caroline wanted this, and Willie didn't want it, that starts to mess up the chemistry between us, because we thought we had talked about it, we got a resolution to it, and we moved on. But when that stuff starts to come out, it starts to erode the fabric of who you are as a organization. It starts to erode that trust.
What do you think some of those examples of leaks that may have?
I think the thing with Cowton being a guy, and it comes to find out that maybe Cowton was, Amy never said Cowton was the guy. Rand, he wasn't qualified. Well, Amy thought he was qualified, He wants more power. No, I don't want more power. It's all of these mixed messages that are coming out of this building that are not beneficial to the organization, but is beneficial to the head coach.
Will Levis is the starter is another one of those
Exactly.
things.
Will Levis is starter. I didn't want to say that. Well, who put that out there? Why is this stuff getting out? Why are things being said and again, I don't Jared's doing his job. Jared does a damn good job at what he does. He gets information that some people just can't get. But when that information is relayed to him, and then he doing his job, he's going to relay it on air. Miss Amy's thinking, where's this stuff coming from? This is too much coming out of my organization. It needs to stop. And the only way I can stop it is to move forward, move away from this coach and everybody that had anything to do with him. Let's get them all out of the building because she's. Hey,
so you think Vrabel was doing too much talking?
Yeah, I think there was too much coming out of that building, and it was all pro Vrabel. Nothing was pro the organization. It was all pro Vrabel, and Rand really wasn't the guy, or Rand doesn't know quite what he's doing. Everything was negative toward everybody else, or not necessarily negative, but everything was pro Vrabel. Everything that was coming out that we read and we reported on was always pro Vrabel. If you can point to me something that wasn't pro Vrabel, then my fault. But I think everything that was coming out of that building was pro Vrabel.
Was draft night one of those things, do you think?
Now, when did that come out?
So
because it doesn't seem that's the first time I heard about it in Joe's and Diana's report.
I'm sorry, I'm not referencing Ryan Cowden doing the draft, running the draft board. I'm talking about draft night whenever Diana Rossini was in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
And she alluded to the Titans possibly trading up and drafting
stuff
a quarterback.
Like that. Stuff like that. Like, why is this stuff coming out of my building? And if we are to believe that Diana was so connected to Vrabel that everything that came out of that building was through Vrabel, from Vrabel through Diana. So that was leaked by Diana. I would tend to believe who leaked it, somebody from his camp. So we can't keep having these things. It's eroding who we are as a franchise. That's the way I look. And I could be completely wrong in this, completely wrong. But when you start having these things come out, just drip, 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 and none of it's pro organization, when this is a head coach that preaches organization over everything, there's no one person that is bigger than the organization, but all this stuff is dripping out against the organization and the decision Miss Amy made. Come on, eventually you're like, nah, we got to get rid of some people.
Yeah. And I do have a lot of frustration with Amy Adams Strunk. I have a lot of frustration going back to when she fired John Robinson, that you want collaboration and you want synergy within your building, yet you don't give the head coach that's a pretty massive part of this collaboration, maybe as much say as they should get in the GM search. I have frustration with Amy Adams-Strunk essentially trying to force a marriage and force a collaboration between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. And that's not an anti-Rand or anti-Mike sentiment. That's more so my frustration with Amy Adams-Strunk, because you can't always force those things to happen. But one thing that I very much so do agree with Amy Adams-Strunk in this article, and if this is true, reporting from Diana Rossini and Joe Rexrode, that Mike Vrabel wanted full roster control, I'm glad Amy didn't give it to him. I don't think that works in this league. When the coach is the coach and developing a game plan and hiring a coaching staff, and he's also in charge of the scouts, he's also in charge of acquisitions and free agency and trades.
He might as well be the
draft.
GM.
That's far too much control for one person to have. You need to have checks and balances within an organization. But in that same breath, that's also why I don't think that a true collaboration where there's no division of roles, that there's no defined final say, I don't think that works either. But I do agree with Amy Adams-Strunk not giving Mike Vrabel full control.
Yeah, I was trying to look through this article. It may have been in another report that I was reading. It alluded to she didn't want the same thing because it mentioned by name Jeff Fisher and the late, great Floyd Reese. It mentioned by name those two. She didn't want that same situation to happen over again. Now, I don't think it was the Athletics report or their article, but I know it was some articles we have been reading or reports we have been reading in regards to that. So, again, and I think I even brought that up the other day, like, listen, if you don't recognize your faults, you're bound to repeat, or your actions or the things you do wrong, you're bound to repeat those things again. I did say that the other day in regards to this organization. They sort of went through the same thing with Jeff and Floyd. It was great for a while, but then it kind of eroded. I wasn't here toward the end of it, but the things that I was hearing, it eroded pretty fast. She didn't want that to happen over again. So if you don't recognize it, you're bound to repeat it. Well, she recognized it. Maybe she recognized it in a sense it may have been a year too late, because it does say in Diana's in Rex's article that she thought about moving on from him last year. You know, when they fired John, she thought about resetting it last year. But, you know, she said, okay, I like him. He's a good coach. I feel we can move forward with him. So she just decided to move forward with him. But obviously it didn't work out the way she thought it was going to work out.
And this text in our text line kind of alludes to or aligns with that point that you just made. Josh texts in, phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, says whoever the next coach of the Titans is, if ownership comes out at any point and says how much they believe that you're the guy moving forward, you might as well put your house on the market. That is one of my concerns, is you give John Robinson a contract extension. Less than a year later, he gone. You give Mike Vrabel more roster control. You believe that Mike Vrabel is your coach. Maybe you believe he's a good coach. A year later, he's gone.
Well, you said Malarkey was your guy.
He's gone.
He was gone.
A couple days later.
Exactly. After a win in the playoffs, that subsequently they lose the next round. But he's gone.
Now you believe in Rand Carthon. You want him to be part of the coaching search moving forward, which I think that he should be part of the coaching search moving forward, because the last thing you want to do is make the same mistake twice of trying to force a second marriage. But now you believe in Rand Carthon. Rand Carthon is your guy. Why should I believe that a year later you're not going to change your mind? Because you have been doing a whole lot of changing your mind.
There needs to be, and I'm not saying, and I'm not going to allude that there isn't, but from what we're reading, how this whole thing has gone down in the course of the last 2 years, not just this year, there needs to be some stabilization. And you're not going to get this franchise stable if you indeed turn right back around. And next year, because you may have not a good season or you don't make the playoffs, then change the GM. Because then you'll be back in the same boat you were in. You know, when you hired out of practice, when you had your head coach and then you hired your GM. Typically, it's the other way around, and I do wholeheartedly believe in that. Again, sometimes it works where if you want to hire out of order, sometimes it works. I'm not saying that, but I think she, in her mind, I need to put things back in order. So if you want to move on next year, you got to move on from everybody. You can't just move on from the GM. But I think the minute he hires his coach, the clock starts, and she's going to give him an opportunity to build this thing. Because you can't build something if you stop. If I hire a contractor to do my house, build my house, and then I fire him the next year, it's going to put me back. And now I got to get with this new contractor, give him the plans, and make sure he knows what he's doing and everything else. Then I got to essentially start over again, not necessarily with the project, but I got to start over again with getting to know this person, this individual, or his firm or her firm. You don't want to do that in this situation. Give this, whoever he hires, y'all are a package deal. Either y'all succeed together, which I pray that they do. I'm pulling for whoever the head coach is. I'm pulling for this organization to be much better next year. But they need some years because this franchise, this roster is not in a place to win tomorrow. They're not. They're going to need some years to build this up. If we don't have a winning team, if we are not fielding the winning team by the year we have to move into that new stadium, then maybe even a year before that, then we need to make some changes, which would be, 3 years?
Yeah.
Which would be 3 years. So, 24, 25, 26, we move into the stadium 27. So if we're not winning by 26 or 27, there might be some delays over there. But if we're not winning by then I got to make a change because now I got to give the fan base optimism that we're heading in the right direction.
I see a couple texts in the text line. It's alluding to the fact that I don't like Ran Carthon. Someone says, just admit you don't like Ran. That's not the case in the slightest. I have no problem whatsoever with Ran Carthon. I think Ran Carthon's a really nice guy. I want him to be successful here. I want him to be successful. I want to know what he and Amy Adams Strunk's vision is for the franchise. I want good things for Ran Carthon. I don't dislike Ran Carthon in the slightest. All right, we've got some playoff games this weekend. We've also got some coaching odds. The next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Mike Vrabel's next landing spot. So joining us for her best bets of the weekend is Ali Melnicki of Zen Sports. She'll join us coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. That's 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Tune into 102.5 The Game this Saturday for Vanderbilt men's basketball. The Commodores take on Mississippi on the road. Pregame begins at 11:30 a.m. and tip-off is at noon. Coverage is also available on the 102.5 The Game app. We've got some playoff games this weekend. We've also got a ton of coaching changes, and Vegas has responded. So joining us, giving us her best bets of the weekend is Ali Melnicki of Zen Sports. Ali, appreciate you for joining us. First and foremost, I want to talk about some of these coaching changes. So of course, we got the crazy news drop this week. Mike Vrabel has been fired with the Tennessee Titans. He currently has the best odds to join the New England Patriots as their head coach next year. Would you take that bet?
I would, definitely. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence the day after Mike Vrabel goes or 2 days after that Bill Belichick decides to park from the Patriots. I think that would be a perfect fit. You know, Vrabel's loved in New England. I went to college up there, so I would put my money on that in a heartbeat.
I think I would too, Ali. I think I'm with you there. In terms of on-the-field play, Miami and Kansas City coming up on Saturday. I was shocked at the over-under, 44.5 with those two offenses, but what do you like with that game?
I'm actually going to side with the under. I mean, Kansas City has struggled to score the last couple weeks. I actually love Miami in this game. I know they played earlier in the year back in Germany. I forget what week it was. But I think Miami not only covers, but I think they win this one.
Allie, how about Pittsburgh and Buffalo -10? Do you take Pittsburgh in the points?
So I think Pittsburgh's been the popular pick because they've been hot in the past few weeks. But, you know, if you look at their strength of schedule the last couple weekends, it's not been a big one. I think the Bills are just the hottest team right now in the NFL. They're on a roll. I would side with Bills. I know it's a lot of points to lay, but I'm going with Buffalo.
I think the most interesting game to me is this Cleveland and Houston game. Now, Cleveland has to travel to Houston. Houston is hosting their first playoff game in some years, but they are an underdog in this game. So do you take the points in Houston, or do you go with this vaunted defense in Cleveland? By the way, their corner did get hurt in practice. I don't know if he will play or not, but, you know, he is on the injury report as of today.
Yeah, this is a tough one because these are two teams I actually picked to make the playoffs that people thought I was crazy at the beginning of the year, and but I'm going to go with Cleveland right now. I mean, you know Joe Flacco's record when it comes to the playoffs. I think that they're going to roll. You've seen rookie quarterbacks struggle in their first playoff game, and I love seeing
some injuries, and it seems like Hurts has been dealing with injuries all season quietly. But they are a favorite. They're a 3-point favorite traveling to Tampa, I believe. How do you see this one going?
I think everyone in the public's going to side with Philly because they were in the Super Bowl last year, but this is a team that has been struggling the past couple weeks. I think Tampa's a team to be scary about. Baker Mayfield seems to have that team rolling. I actually think Tampa pulls off the upset and wins at home.
Ali Melnicki of Zen Sports is with us. As they always say, anything can happen in the National Football League, especially in the playoffs. So if you have to pick one big upset of the weekend, maybe people don't see it coming, what would be your pick?
I'm going to stick with Miami over Kansas City. I like the Dolphins in this one.
Interesting. So looking at that
frigid weather.
Ooh, it is going to be what, 0 degrees? All of 0 degrees in Kansas City?
Minus 15 or 10, right, Allie? I think that's what they said.
Hey, Dolphins know how to swim in cold weather, too.
Hey, that's true.
Yes.
Touche. A little bit surprised here. The best odds for anytime touchdown scorer for the Kansas City Chiefs, it is not Travis Kelce. It's actually Isaiah Pacheco. Who would be your pick for anytime touchdown scorer with Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I would go with Pacheco. They're going to go with the run game right there. I don't think Pat Mahomes trusts his receivers. I think Travis Kelce has just been going on the downside, so I'd go with Pacheco.
Best bet of the weekend, your favorite one, whether it's a parlay, whether it's a prop bet, whether it's just a straight-up money line, favorite bet of the weekend?
I think the Bills, I think they're just on a roll right now. I think that they go all the way. I think they cover against Pittsburgh. I really like them. I think they're a dangerous team in the AFC.
Ali Melnicki, we appreciate you as always. Appreciate your best bets. Enjoy the games this weekend, even if your New York Giants won't be participating.
Thanks, Al.
Might be kind of a relief, honestly. Maybe kind of a
one
relief.
in there.
Ali, we
All right,
appreciate
thank
you.
you,
Thanks
Ali.
for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
It does kind of feel like, and we heard Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft's press conference. Robert Kraft said, we look to fill this vacancy quickly. I know a lot of people will probably read into that and say, well, they're gonna hire Mike Vrabel tomorrow. Breathe. Everybody breathe.
No.
They do have to go through the same hiring processes and same hiring practices that the rest of the National Football League has to go through. They do have to satisfy the Rooney Rule. They do have to interview 2 external minority candidates. They cannot interview any coach that's currently under contract with the NFL until the divisional round of the playoffs is over. Mike Vrabel's going to go somewhere else, and it's going to feel weird, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And it may hurt for a day or a season, but it will be okay. The Titans will get this thing back in order.
And, there's going to be more and more, especially as these coaching searches start to ramp up, especially as New England search starts to ramp up. There's going to be more and more pro-Mike Vrabel national media. And that's not an anti-national media sentiment. It's just that's something that we know, that we've heard for so long. The national media loves Mike Vrabel, adores Mike Vrabel, thinks Mike Vrabel can do no wrong. We played a few clips from Michael Lombardi's GM Shuffle podcast earlier. Who are you going to hire to replace Mike Vrabel? Look, Mike Vrabel's replaceable.
Yeah, if I was an alien just coming to the earth and listen to Mike Lombardo, I would have thought Vrabel won like 5 or 6 championships.
How many did he win?
None.
He's a good coach.
As a player, he's won 3.
Yeah.
But as a coach, he hasn't won any. But that doesn't mean he's not a good coach. But even good coaches get replaced.
He's a good coach. He made a lot of missteps and a lot of mistakes with the Tennessee Titans. It's going to be okay.
He did.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company is up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.